The mayor doesn't like to talk.
The mayor that's supposed to talk to most of the time? I think it's something he prefers when he's standing. Mayor? I'll put the others. Israel Pointers. Fulton Joint Unified School District. The board members. Good, good. Yeah, it's same here, man. Same here. I got two girls. One just graduated last year from college. I got another one that's at River City College. River City College. So yeah, and that's they wanted to go that way. So I think she's gonna transfer to Cal State next year. And then as soon as she does her 2 years, she'll go to Cal State. I did that too. I went to Mount Sac and then transferred into the university. Oh, okay. Yeah. Scott Dales. It's the best way to do it. But I'm still paying. So. Me too. Yeah, I'm still paying, man. Pretty petty. Yeah, I know. Oh, okay. You know something? I keep in my card. And I also represent, today I'll be speaking on behalf of another department I work with tobacco-free San Bernardino County, one of the co-founders and directors. And I'm the chair. And I'm also the community liaison for Young Visionaries for Terrence Stone. And his community. And I do that and I do other stuff. Trust me, I'm part of the gang and drug task force for the county. Belong to other coalitions and other departments and stuff. So form a deputy sheriff here in the community too. Yes, sir. You have to. Challenge yourself every day as much as you can. Okay, well, we do have schools. Yeah, we have, I think, one or two schools fall into the line because we're Fulton Joint Unified. So we have schools in San Bernardino, all of Grand Terrace, Wilmington, even all the way as far as Montana, Rialto. So our boundaries are back. Yeah, and I always wanted to know why they always said joint before I became a board member years ago. And it's because of that. So keep an eye on them over there. Where's Milford at? Yeah, because I ran for the appointment. I ran for their appointment. Yeah, for the Yes. You have a card? That way you can give me that. I have 5 emails. So just give me that one. That's the school district one. These are school district ones. And mayor. All right, brother. Let's have gracias, man. Hola, y recuerdos para servir. De parte de Oh, sí. Ahora ya me acuerdo. Ok. Ahora sí. Ya, ya, ya.
That
Can talk.
I'm Israel. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes. I remember. Yes. Sir, how are you?
All right, good evening, everyone. If we can start finding seats, we'll get going with the program because I know we have some very important guests. I see one of them out there shaking hands right now. All right, the council actually met earlier this evening at 5:30. We did some training in emergency operations in our community center, or in our EOC rather. And I don't know if there's anything else we need to report out on that. Other than that, it was just a training. We did have some members of the public there. Kevin was watching to make sure we were doing what we were supposed to be doing and listening. Isn't that right, Kevin? He's not paying attention. All right. So with that, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'll take roll. Councilmember Spencer Wong.
Present.
Councilmember Popescu.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Rixby.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly.
Aye.
Mayor Duper.
Present.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. We're going to move on to our invocation and pledge of allegiance led by Dr. Wong.
Bow our heads. Our Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today and for everyone that's here. And I ask for a special blessing on everybody here and all the work that we do, and that we are a light for you. And bless all of our work and the decisions we're going to make here this evening and throughout the year. And we ask all these things in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Mr. City Manager, are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
All right, now we're going to invite anyone who wants to speak on a non-agendized item to please come forward, and I'll look and see if we have any in the queue. We have at least one digital Milford. We'll make you first just because you walked up first.
I'll just make it quick. As you know, I'm with San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District, and a week from Thursday on the 20th, out at the east end of our valley, we're having a ribbon cutting on our $50 million, the completion of our $50 million enhanced recharge project, and you're all welcome. We appreciate any of you that could be there. Thank you.
Okay. Can you describe a recharge project? Can you describe that a
Recharge
little bit?
project is large ponds where we bring the water in, they go into percolation ponds, and it goes into this lake under us. That's how we create this lake. And we've just added 20 more of these. And in addition to that, we have created habitat conservation areas in between each of them. So we've done a habitat conservation project as well as a water project. So it turned out really, really well. Bogue Contractors was our main contractor on this.
How do you spend $50 million on a hole in the ground?
Well, come and see. I'll be more than happy to show you. We also spent $70 million on a pipe from Sterling out there, and that goes into more holes in the ground.
When is it, Milford? When's the date?
The 20th,
The 20th?
yes.
Location?
You go out the Green Spot Road to Cone Camp Road, and that's where it is. It's out in the middle of nowhere, except all of a sudden there are substantial, well, of course, we have over 70 different percolation ponds there already, and we've just had a significant addition because it hooks into the Seven Oaks Dam also. So,
Seriously, can you send us a map or something
Yeah.
that'll help?
Is that below the Seven Oaks Dam?
yes, it's right below the Seven Oaks Dam. Yeah. Just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And the time is, what time are you doing you're having ribbon cutting at your?
10, yes, at 9 a.m.
Okay.
Right. So, thank you.
Sure. Okay, on the digital screen, we have Andrea De Leon, and I'm not sure if anybody else submitted any paper slips, but Andrea, please. Thank you for a great event the other night.
Thank you. That's exactly why I wanted to come up and say hello. Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing me to present tonight. Just to say a few words of congratulations to, of course, our city manager. Not sure how many people out in the world who listen to city council meetings are aware that last week he was announced as a Citizen of the Year. Yay, we're very proud and very happy to give you that honor. In addition, we celebrated the Business of the Year, and that was CR&R. And then just to quickly, just to announce to the rest of the public that your Employee of the Year was Kyle McGavin, and Deputy of the Year was Deputy Roger Alfaro, and a Firefighter of the Year was Firefighter Paramedic Roland Blackiston. And just really proud to have participated in that and to have given the honors to each of the respective honorees. And it was just a wonderful evening, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. And thank you so much for participating and being with us that night.
Thank you very much. That was a great evening, and congratulations to Jarb again. Few people, well, I think probably a lot of people know that he lives here in the city and dedicates a lot of time outside of his regular paid duties to do a lot of stuff for our community. So very much appreciated. Okay, Madam Clerk, is that it on our list?
Yes, I don't have any other speakers. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our scheduled items. 2A is a presentation by my friend Mark Cloud from Southern California Edison. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't claim you as a friend right now. I'm not sure if people are going to throw rocks at you. Or...
Well, if you won't, I will.
I think
just
I'm sorry.
No, if I can say just a couple things, because when we had the big fires west of us a month ago, Southern California Edison was shutting down power in some neighborhoods. And I'm not sure why they called me, because my power didn't get shut down, but I actually think that's part of why they called me, is my power was still up and theirs was down. But anyway, so I had multiple conversations and was able to contact Mark, representing Southern California Edison. And I had multiple questions, and you had straightforward, honest answers, and I really appreciated that. And so I asked if he would be willing to come and to explain to our citizens how the network works, of why people were calling me saying, my neighbor's power's on and my power's off, and why. And furthermore, daily, why is your power on? So we discussed that, and I appreciated your explanation, and you agreed to come. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
And as a resolution from the council, we all voted you can shut off his power anytime.
Well, I can assure you that your mayor pro tem is not getting any special treatment from Edison, and I can explain exactly, or almost exactly, what was going on there. And Mayor Duper, I mean, I think we should be friends. I think we should all, the more friends you have, the better. But let's get into the wildfire mitigation strategy and presentation that I'm going to be going over tonight. Yes?
I'm sorry, may I interrupt for a moment?
Please.
Our clicker won't work with your PDF, so you would have to let me know and I'll click to the
Okay,
next
thank you so much. This is going to be a broad overview of everything we're doing to fight wildfires in the state. We can't cover everything tonight because we don't have enough time. It's very technical, everything that we're doing. So I can't get to everything tonight, but this is going to be a very good overview of what we're doing to fight wildfires in California. We're going to talk about the PSPS outages that occurred here in Loma Linda and throughout the region. And for those of you in the room who are watching, you experienced a PSPS outage, I'm sorry. I know that they were very uncomfortable and they lasted a long time this time. And I hope we do better next time. But bear with us as we go through this deck tonight, and I'll do my best to answer all of your questions, and I'll take any of your comments as well to the company. So let's go to the next slide, next page rather. This is a quick intro on SE. We've been around in some form since really the 70s or 80s. So we've been around for a very, very long time, officially since 1909 in this capacity as SCE. We have a parent company, which is Edison International. We are one of the largest utilities in America, and we operate under something called the Regulatory Compact, which means we are governed by, in essence, the California Public Utilities Commission and the California legislature, and they make a lot of our biggest decisions for us. We'll get into more of that in just a second. Next slide, please. Obviously, our primary role is to supply safe and reliable power to the furthest extent possible that we can, and we serve power to virtually everyone in Southern California. Outside of those utilities that are owned by municipalities like Riverside Public Utilities and Colton Public Utilities, there's a few cases where a city or customers might be part of something called a community choice aggregator, and outside of that, you're a customer of ours. And folks often say, well, why is there a monopoly in California when it comes to the utilities? I would love some choice. And I can get into the answer or the reason why that is there. So just real quick, we are undergoing a really major change in the utility sector in terms of how we build the grid and what it's going to do next. So we've had a grid of the 20th century for a while, and now that we're in the 21st century, we've got a lot of new technology available to us that we didn't have even 10 years ago in some cases. And that's all going to help us do this big thing called the energy transition, which is basically where, according to state mandates, we as a utility company must receive all of our power from decarbonized resources by 2045. And that means no natural gas, certainly no more coal coming from out of state in our portfolio. It's all going to be renewable by 2045 if all things go as planned. And you might say, well, we've got some time to get there. Well, with the scale of our grid and how long it takes us to build things, we don't have that much time. So let's go on to the next slide. Again, we're regulated by the CPUC. This is a 5-member board that is appointed by the governor's office. So anytime you're curious about who manages or runs, makes the biggest decisions for SCE, PG&E, and SDG&E, it's the California Public Utilities Commission. For some reason, they also regulate limousines, but that's I don't know how that happened, but they also do that. And so they're in San Francisco, right? That's where they operate out of. We get guidance, not regulation, but guidance from the CEC, the California Energy Commission. Obviously, we're regulated by FERC when it comes to interstate power, but also things like nuclear. We're managed by FERC. And then the California legislature, while they don't necessarily set policies like the CPUC does for us, like how much we can charge per kilowatt hour, they do charge, or they do, though, roll out mandates like the one I mentioned earlier, this 2045 mandate of being 100% decarbonized by then. That is a mandate that came from the state, all right? So we're essentially managed by all of them and, well, by all of you too. Let's go on to the next. The energy transition, what does it mean? This is a big, lofty goal of the state. I've already said the basic parameters of it, but it's driven by SB 100, which says, again, 100% clean energy by 2045. And so we have a lot of work to do because we had to build not only our own renewable energy projects, but we also have to figure out how to fold more renewable energy into our system coming from all over the place, because now power is distributed instead of centralized. And so we are taking power from all over the place: wind farms, solar farms, battery storage facilities, geothermal, et cetera. It's a complicated system. It's more complicated now than ever before. And we have to sort out how we're going to receive and distribute all those electrons. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so this is in keeping with what we're going to be speaking about tonight. There are 3 big pieces of legislation that came out around wildfire in California. And firstly, I should say, SCE has always done a good job maintaining its system for safety. But we are dealing with heightened wildfire risk today. I'll get into why that is. But we are dealing with a much greater risk today than ever before. And so the state rolled out a couple of pieces of legislation that basically, it says what you see there, requires utilities to invest in wildfire prevention. This is one of the reasons why your bill has gone up over the last few years, because beginning at that time, 2018, we have been doing lots of wildfire, or grid hardening, which is another way of saying fireproofing. So lots of money is going into that. It's a major area of investment for us, and that means that your bill is going to go up from that. There is a AB 1054, 2019, a big wildfire fund was created, and it was done in conjunction with the utilities and the state of California. And there's, in short, there is a fund of something like $20 billion, a little more than that, that is set up to, in essence, keep any of the investor-owned utilities in California from going bankrupt if they are encountering a major catastrophe like we're encountering in LA County, which we'll also get into that. But that fund is there. The question is, how long will it be there? How sustainable is it? And will it truly keep our investor-owned utilities out of, let's say, bankruptcy if, in fact, there was some major series of calamities that took place on our grid? And we're about to find out how that all works. As I'll explain in just a second. And then finally, the CPUC requires that all the investor-owned utilities in California supply an annual wildfire mitigation update. It's basically our guidebook, our Bible on everything we're doing and everything we plan to do to continue to bring the risk of wildfire down. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right. Why is the wildfire risk so high now? Well, there's a couple of factors. One, of course, we're dealing with really warm and dry conditions. Is it a cycle? Is it climate change? I'll let you decide. I will tell you the moisture levels in the air are much lower than they've ever been, even at the coast. We had a warm January that was super dry. And if you talk to our fire folks, they'll tell you the vegetation is crispy. I think I heard this morning, one of your local fire folks said the vegetation is crispy. Vegetation plays a huge role in the fire risk, which is why there's been a lot of commotion around clearing the forests. Absolutely needs to happen. We've always taken vegetation management very, very seriously, but all of that work ramped up in 2018. And this was not only a response to what we're seeing with the scale of the fires going up over time. The number of fires has been relatively flat. It's the scale of the fires that has gone up. And that's really alarming because, the scale has been, of these fires have been massive and very, very destructive. And so, so the dry conditions, the lack of moisture, lack of rain, and heat, this all plays a role in why it basically created a perfect scenario for wildfires in California. And as I just mentioned, January was a hot, dry January. At one point, I had my air conditioner on. And that's saying something. It shouldn't be happening like that, but it is. So we are dealing with weather that we haven't seen in a long time. Let's talk about the strong winds. We're going to talk about the Santa Anas because the Santa Ana winds obviously played a major role in the fires we saw in LA County and all of the resulting PSPS outages. And folks will say, I was born and raised in the area. I've been around these devil winds my whole life. And a lot of folks will say that. A lot of folks have told me throughout this incident, we've always had Santa Ana winds. Why is now any different? Well, the answer is the event that we experienced there in the beginning of January was unlike any wind event we've seen in a very, very long time. I personally haven't seen anything like that. And what does that mean? It means wind gusts were up into 175 miles per hour and 100 miles per hour, somewhere in between there for wind gusts. Very, very dangerous winds. If you were in an area that got hit by those kind of winds, you know what I'm talking about. But some people say, well, I actually didn't see those kind of winds, so why was my power out? Well, I'll get into some of the technical reasons why some people had power and others didn't. But it is important to note that that wind event was something different. It was unique. And I hope we don't see it again. Is it possible that we see something like that again? Yes. I hope it's more mild in the future, like we've experienced before. This was a serious one, and it lasted for 2 weeks intermittently, and the wind speeds were very, very high. So that is why this event was particularly different, and it's why some of the embers that were generated by the fires in the Palisades and in Eaton and Sylmar, it's why the winds played a primary role in why the fires were so widespread, because of course embers were flying, a quarter of a mile or half a mile at a time in that wind. So wind played a huge role. All right, finally, let's look at the urban wildland interface. This is a great picture. This picture kind of describes what we see all around us in the Inland Empire, which is dry brush and hillsides butting up against, increasingly, homes. This is part of the reason why the damage for these fires is getting more intense. It's because we're doing more development in this area, the urban wildland interface areas. I do believe that at some point, maybe the state will get involved in limiting construction around the foothills in the future. It would make sense to me that would happen. People are already talking about it. That is one of the reasons. That's one of the things at play here, and that's one of the reasons why we're taking wildfire threats so seriously. It's why the state is as well. But this is something that we need to consider moving forward as a state. How much do we allow to be built in the foothills? Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So our wildfire mitigation efforts, a lot of the spending is put into three different buckets. One is grid hardening and fire prevention. Grid hardening just means fireproofing. And what does that mean? It means synthetic materials instead of wooden materials like we see in traditional utility infrastructure, a lot of wooden poles. We're in the high fire risk areas and let's say the secondary of high fire risk areas, so tiers 2 and 3, we're doing a lot of this work. Typically, if you're in a lower fire risk area, if you live in an urban center surrounded by pavement and concrete, you're not at the same risk. You're not going to see some of these innovations in your neighborhood, but a lot of folks are. And what we're seeing is, what you will see soon is synthetic poles that are fireproof, that are made out of different materials now than wood. You're going to see synthetic materials on the cross arms of the arms that go across the pole that hold up the lines. You're going to see lines that are wrapped, and there's a picture of it in this deck, lines that are wrapped in a material, a sheath that protects the lines from sparking, and we call that covered conductor, or undergrounding in the sky, if you will. We also are deploying, if you see in this picture, they're installing a couple of pieces of equipment. We're putting a lot of equipment on our poles now that do a couple of things. And a lot of it has to do with telemetry, basically sending signals from all of these stations to our EOC in Irwindale. It's the nerve center of our PSPS operations. Whenever there's any kind of emergency, and I would invite you all to visit the place. Some of you may have before. We give tours. We have an EOC in Irwindale, and that is where our brain trust, if you will, meets during these incidences and makes determinations about when and where to shut power off. And I'll get into how that works. But we are putting in lots of really great technology that sends data to us from all over our service territory. We're getting weather data, for example. You can see a weather station on that pole. We're getting weather data from pockets of our service territory that sometimes each pocket tells us something different about what's happening on the ground, whether it's a different moisture level, let's say, or more importantly, what the winds are doing, right? So this is important to note. We are in a hilly area, right? A mountainous state with a hilly area, lots of foothills. A lot of us live in foothills. It's important to note that the foothills, the topography of our region, plays probably the lead role in why we have Santa Ana winds, because the winds whip up over our mountains and then they come down into our valleys, and that's when they gain steam, or speed, I should say, and really cause chaos. It's also important, I'm bringing this up also because some folks will say, well, I didn't experience much wind during this last big PSPS event. Why did my power go out? There's a couple of reasons for it. One of them is, if you didn't see wind, it's because you're connected to a circuit that is getting wind, and you can't see it because it's a few miles away from you. That's one thing that might be happening. But also, we are making determinations on what circuits to de-energize based on those weather stations, because they're sending real-time data to our nerve center, and we're crunching the data with a supercomputer now. We're doing things we've never done before. We have meteorologists on staff now and folks who have the unique combined experience of being both linemen and firefighters at some point in their career. And if that's you, we would welcome you to apply. We need you there. And so these folks are all helping us make the decisions finally to de-energize. And so all of this goes into that. There's all kinds of also new technology that allows us to sectionalize. Yes.
When you talk about grid hardening, one of the issues I've had some of my constituents talk with me about, less than a mile, probably half a mile from here, is a major easement that Southern California Edison has with huge power poles and lines. Are those grid hardened with the modern technology you're describing, or how susceptible are we to the kind of stuff we saw happen in LA?
Well, the risk is there for everybody. Anywhere you have utility infrastructure, there is a risk, all right? And so, believe it or not, the risk for wildfire is higher on the distribution system, which is the smaller system that you see on the streets and in your backyard. And it's because that is the system that comes into contact with physical objects, i.e. people, cars, palm fronds, et cetera. Whereas the transmission lines are 100 feet in the air, and there's these massive easements surrounding them, and they're typically in more remote areas on the outskirts of town. Those actually don't play, those aren't at the same level of risk. What you saw in LA County, though, was some interesting phenomena, which I'll talk about, that took us by surprise, and I'll explain what that looked like. But the answer is yes, there is a risk with towers and any infrastructure that we put in the ground, and we are working as quickly as we can to fireproof all of it that we can.
So grid hardening, is that happening in Loma Linda on the easement you have?
If it's
Because a year ago, we had helicopters flying, and I'm doing all kind of work up
Yep.
there. Was that grid hardening?
Probably. The short answer is yes. A couple of years ago when we started this work, we started off by first examining the entire system. And we did it both above and on the ground, above the ground and below the ground. And above the ground, we did it with helicopters, and we're doing it now with drones. We got FAA approval to operate drones now. And so the answer is yes. We inspected every square inch of our territory to make the first determinations about where we're going to be doing these investments first. So let's look for the weak points, essentially. We used LiDAR technology, radar technology that helped us see these really difficult to find hotspots on our grid. And we have been consistently taking care of those since that time. And we've taken care of a lot of them. And we continue to do those inspections. So if you see a green and white and yellow helicopter in the air, it's a good chance it's ours, and it's a good chance we're doing aerial inspections. There's sometimes there are helicopters go in the sky, and folks think that it's a spy operation or something. But I can assure you, if it's a green and white and that yellow, it's the same color as our logo. If you see that, that's probably us.
And you're mid-presentation, so I apologize for the interruptions,
problem.
but since it's relevant. We've got constituents that are near that easement area who have lost home insurance because they're in a danger zone. And they're trying to find insurance. Now, that's not a SCE issue, but it's all related. Any comments?
Well, without question, fire insurance in the state is in peril for a couple of different reasons. Some of them come from state regulation or state policy, I would say, but certainly some of it is tied directly to the increased fire risk. I'm sure a fire insurance company will look at your proximity to a power line and say, well, because of this, you're going to go up a couple more points, let's say. I don't know exactly how it works, but do they factor in things like that? I'm sure they do. But when it comes to easements like that, the transmission tower easements, we can't yet do things like wrap that conductor with this sheath material, this gray. I'm going to show you a picture of it in just a second. This almost like plastic. It's like rubberized plastic. We can't put that on transmission lines yet because those voltages are way too high. But what you will see in those areas is vegetation management. So we're doing a lot more vegetation management these days around the towers that you see. And if you think that we're not doing a great job, or if you see an area where we need to improve, please let me know, and I will get our vegetation management crews on those areas. Okay? But there's a major difference between transmission and distribution lines. They almost operate as two different companies within our company, believe it or not. They're interconnected, they're related, but they operate and are managed so differently, and it has everything to do with voltage levels, right? Let's move on to the next slide. All right, so there's a picture of the covered conductor. As if you see this gray lines in your neighborhood, if you live in a high fire risk area, that's what it is. And so what this does is, in essence, it prevents prevents the lines from emitting sparks, because now whatever would have been emitted from, let's say, a palm frond, if it touched the lines, it's now contained within that sheath. Even if those lines fell to the ground, which is often where you would find some fire trouble, because the energized line is coming into contact, of course, with dry vegetation. Even in those cases, this material protects against those incidences as well. Nothing is 100% perfect or accurate, but this actually works really well, and it's reducing our fire risk in high fire risk areas by quite a lot. And so you're going to see more of this. There's going to be a lot more covered conductor. We call it undergrounding in the sky because we are primarily an above ground utility company. There's reasons for that. One of the reasons is operational efficiency, and the other reason is cost. And so we only do undergrounding when it makes sense. We don't do it whenever we want. And so this is the next best alternative to undergrounding infrastructure, is to wrap it in this material. Okay, I already talked about grid hardening. Let's go on to, talking about undergrounding. We are doing more undergrounding now. So When you hear me say we don't do undergrounding as a company, that's largely true. But in light of the fire risk that we're now facing, we are now undergrounding more. We call it targeted undergrounding. And we're doing it in both high and medium fire risk areas. So we're going to be doing more undergrounding in the future. You probably won't see it in your neighborhoods. And so it'll be mainly in the areas that provide the greatest risk for our system. But you will see more of it. Let's move on. All right, so what you're seeing on this pole is some of the synthetic material I talked about. You can see the synthetic cross arms. You're seeing a lot of technology that is some of it's pretty new. Like the technology that's here, aside from the wooden pole and the cross arm and the wires, like the rest of it is pretty new stuff. So you can see on this in this picture the covered conductor. It's the gray lines, and all kinds of automated, digitized technology that's on that pole that basically tells us remotely what's happening on the system. And so now we can tell remotely if there's a fault. We can de-energize and re-energize remotely. And this technology is fantastic. It gives us lots of really good intelligence on the ground as to the health and safety of the system. And we make key decisions based on what you're seeing on this pole. So this is being deployed everywhere. Drones, of course, we use them when and where we can. We cannot use them during PS events for a couple of reasons. One, typically wind is a problem, but also even if the wind died down, we have to do our post shut-off inspections in person as a protocol. Let's move on. All right, so this is really why I think I'm here tonight. We had a lot of folks in Loma Linda experience these PSPS shutoffs this last time around, and I'll explain to you exactly what those are, how we came to them, and how they operate in our company. All right, so PSPS, it's something that's been around the idea's been around for a long time, actually. I think San Diego Gas and Electric used it before it was a requirement from the state on their own a couple of years before the mandate came down. Now, all 3 investor-owned utilities in California have a mandate. We have to have PSPS as a tool in our toolbox, and that's all it is. It's one tool of many tools in our toolbox. They give us final jurisdiction as to how it is rolled out. So if you don't like the way it was rolled out this last time, that's our fault. And we can talk about that. But the state only requires that we have the policy in place, and then we do everything else to deploy it in real time. The whole goal of the PSPS is, first of all, it's a tool of last resort, meaning we only do it when those folks in that nerve center in Irwindale say, because of all the data we're getting on the ground, the weather data, the humidity levels, the wind speeds, and a whole host of other factors that you can't see and probably bore you because it has to do with our infrastructure and the layout of our circuitry. Because of all these factors combined, we are making a decision, and one person finally makes the final call, right? The person in charge. But it's a team effort to pull in all these data points and make a final decision as to when and where the PSPS outages will take place. That's what you saw in Loma Linda and in the region around us. What we were trying to do out here, and it worked, but it also was very, very uncomfortable. And again, for that, I'm sorry, folks. I know you went through a very long outage, and I hope we did learn from that, and I think we'll do better the next time we have to do this. But the whole goal is to prevent what was happening in LA County from happening in our county. Because all the counties in Southern California are essentially the same. Maybe San Diego is a little different, but Orange County and there's hills in San Diego County, and then San Bernardino, Riverside County, of course. We all have mountains and hills. We all have foothills. And we all had virtually the same kind of topography they have in LA County where the fires took place. So our whole goal was, we saw what was going on there, disaster. Our whole system got burned up, and we have to go rebuild it now. It was a devastation on all the property. Of course, people lost their lives in a few of those fires. So our whole goal with this is to prevent that from happening in this last case here in the Inland Empire. Fortunately, there were no fires, and I think PSPS probably played a role in that. And so did other things, but PSPS, you could argue, played a role. We do talk with our firefighting folks, and they tell us that, in fact, PSPS protocols do prevent fires. If you recall the Lahaina fire that took place just about 2 years ago or so, people asked the question, why didn't they have PSPS there? Well, it's because their state didn't require it. Maybe they don't have the same risk profile we do for wildfires. We're ahead of them on that. So we have it, and I do think probably other utilities will adopt some form of this in the future if, in fact, their liabilities go up and their risk exposure goes up for wildfire. I think you'll probably see more of that. So how do we make the decision? Again, it's winds, it's wind speed, it's wind direction, it's heat, it's ambient temperature, it's humidity levels, and it's it's the dryness in the brush. We're looking at all of it, and we combine all that data together and make the final call. Let's move on. All right, this is a picture of our emergency operations center. It's much bigger than this. That's one room in it, but that's kind of what it looks like. Each county has their own, and we participate in each county's EOC operations when they want us to be there. I was there that first week of those fires. I was there at the San Bernardino EOC representing our company there. But we have our own EOC, and it looks like this. And we're doing all kinds of incredible things in there. And we're not just looking at wildfire risk. We're looking at any hazard that would occur on our system. So we're prepared and ready for really anything, flooding, an earthquake, whatever. We have this in place now to help us get through those times with the most reliability possible and the most safety possible. But it is in this room where those decisions are made. As you can see there, it says we're monitoring infrastructure. We're doing everything from that room. And again, most everything is remote now, which is incredible technology. It puts us at certain risks with cyber attacks, something we take very seriously, another area of investment for our company as we modernize the grid. But cyber attacks are very much a part of this nerve center, and we work really hard on preventing cyber attacks from taking place on our grid. You can only imagine what would happen if somebody in, you name it, whatever, a foreign country had some good hackers, some talented hackers hacking into our system. And by the way, they hack into our system every single day, or they try to. You can imagine what would happen on the ground here in cities if we were shut down by a hack over this course of a few days, if not a few weeks. It would be disastrous. Another issue we are now facing in the 21st century as a utility company. Let's move on. During the PSPS outages, and I should say this, let's talk about communication, because a lot of folks said, I didn't know what was going on while the event was happening. We communicate with you before, during, and after the event, and we do our best to keep you posted along the way. Either there is a PSPS coming, we believe, because the wind patterns are telling us this. By the way, our predictions so far have been very, very accurate. Folks were asking, why do we keep de-energizing? And I kept telling them, because we think wind is coming back soon. And in fact, it did. It came back every single time we predicted it in this last wind event, which is why it lasted like two weeks. It was incredible. But this is something that we do to, not solve all of your problems, but at least show you that we care when these outages are taking place. We have CRCs, Community Resource Centers, that we've pre-planned. We've predetermined where they are. Every region has a few of them that are predetermined. We work with city management on setting those up. And so that's what it would look like. You would have some SCE folks there. We would have resources for you, information, a couple of items that might make things more comfortable for you, like a charger or something. Sometimes we can even do vouchers for groceries, depending on the scenario. We don't make that offer readily, but that is sometimes what we do in these centers when they're set up. So we did deploy these throughout the last event that we just had, and we were stretched very thin. We had more than 3,000 SCE employees on the event, and we were maxed out on the CRCs, and we have something called a CRV, which is a Community Resource Vehicle. So it's this, but in vehicle form. And so we were fully maxed out on all of that service in this last event. Otherwise, and I tried to bring some of those resources out here to Loma Linda and Grand Terrace, but we were fully expended, unfortunately. So that's probably where we're going to do some more investment there. Yes?
Question. One of the complaints I received, I appreciate what you're saying about the effort of SCE to communicate with customers. What forms of communication are you utilizing? Because I had some people said, we kind of surmised what was going on, but we didn't know what the heck was going on, and we had no clue how long this was going to last or why it was our neighborhood and so forth. So I understand communication is very complex in emergency situations like this. But can you tell us a little more about are you sending emails? Are you making phone calls? Or what form of communication and how frequent during the outages?
We are basically using every technique outside of carrier pigeon, basically. So we are texting, emailing, and calling folks before, during, and after the events. And we have a different message at each stage of the event. Obviously, if it's before, we're telling them to get ready. If it's during, we're saying we're doing our best to bring power back as quickly as we can. And if it's after, it's, hey, we've brought power back up and you're safe to now use power, whatever the final message is for those folks. But text and email is the best way for us to get a hold of folks. Virtually everyone has an email account with us. So if you pay a bill with us, I'm sure we have your email address. Check your email inbox during those events because we're likely sending the email that you have on file with us, all of those messages. We're also hoping folks sign up for text messages, which they can do through our website. You can sign up for text message alerts from us. We won't spam you. We won't send you anything other than alerts when this kind of thing is happening. So text messaging is a wonderful way for us to get real-time data, information out. And then finally, we do make phone calls in some cases. We pay special attention to what we call our medical baseline group. So those are folks who are on assistive devices for health, so oxygen, sleep app machines, anyone who relies on electricity for their health, they are on a list of ours, and some of them get discounts even on their utility service. But we like to know where they are because we keep a list of them, and sometimes we can even coordinate with law enforcement and emergency responders to get them taken care of.
That was one of the questions I've had to deal with. How do people get on that list? I had several people on CPAP machines, for example, and said, I can't use my CPAP. How do they get on that list? How do you know who's on a CPAP and who isn't?
They apply for it. And so obviously it comes with some verification. We have to get verification from their doctor. We try to make it as easy as we can, but we do need some verification, all right? It's because we want to prevent abuse. So they would do it through our website. They can start the process on our website. And I don't have links for you. I can't give you specific links. What I will tell you is it's very easy to find online. Simply, you can Google SCE Medical Baseline discounts or
SCE Medical Baseline?
Yes. If you Google that, it will take you to the page. And if you have any trouble, you can call our 800 number, which is, I think people always know that they can call our 800 number, which sometimes will deliver various results depending on what's going on in the day. So if you can't find it on our website, call our 800 number, and vice versa. If you feel like our 800 number folks aren't giving you the information you need, you can find it on our website.
Because this is a medical community, so we seem to have a lot of people on CPAP machines beyond what I understood before. So this is important.
They're a vulnerable population, more vulnerable than folks who don't use those devices. And so they do get special consideration from our company. And so we do our best to make sure we know where they are. And if there's like an evacuation, again, we can trade notes with law enforcement to do even something as hands-on as door knocking if we have to. But as it relates to those folks, typically most of the messaging comes out via email and text. And if you're not signed up for text, I would encourage you to do so. And we'll tell you everything that we know at the moment. In this last event, there was so much going on. The outages were so widespread. And we had so many employees. Most of them were deployed in LA County, of course. But we had so much going on that we were not able to keep up with the data on the outage map. That's the other place you can go for information on outages. The SCE outage map. It's a great resource most of the time. It's a great resource. You can plug your address in. It goes to a map. It'll tell you if there's an outage in your neighborhood in the moment, or if when it's being planned, it'll tell you what's coming to your neighborhood and when, and how long approximately it will take to get your power back on. But we were so inundated during this event that we struggled to keep the outage information updated on our SCE outage map.
Okay, so what is the, and I don't mean to dominate this, but what is the relationship between an individual city, like Loma Linda, obviously, and SCE in terms of communication on these things? Because if people are calling me, something's not getting through. And so is it the responsibility of the city to communicate with all of our citizens to say, if you're on a CPAP machine, here's what you need to do to get power? Or is that SCE?
It's both. It's a partnership. We rely on our cities to help us distribute all kinds of information all the time, especially that kind of information. But it's definitely a partnership. I was communicating with all of my elected officials in 10 cities throughout the event to give them broad-based, broad scope updates. And I sent emails to everyone in the elected office here throughout the event. Jarb, I think you were on those too. I was sending those emails to all of you during the event, throughout the event. And so if you weren't getting them, I'll try and find out what happened there. But I was sending emails throughout the entire event. But that's where I come in when it comes to the city relationship. If you have an issue with Edison, call me up.
Let's pause there for a second because I don't want anybody at home to get the wrong idea. So those emails are not giving us times, locations of when stuff's going to get turned on or any of those questions that we're fielding. So I don't want to think that I don't want anybody to get the impression that there's any information withholden. You do a great job of communicating with us. You absolutely do. You're a phenomenal guy and you are my friend. You also are getting beat up quite a bit of things that are outside of your control too. So you are the direct liaison. I sat on plenty of those meetings and I listened to the shots you guys were taking from people bigger and heavier than us at the state level. There's a lot of frustrated electeds all over. And it's, again, the pushback is we have to do this to save lives. And people don't like to hear that, including us. So, but I just want to make that clear, right?
We are not sending electeds, unless we have it, information that we're not sending out.
Play-by-play stuff.
Sure. Now we do give sometimes when we have it, when we're able to, more detail to city staff, and I think electeds can be a part of that too. You have access to what we call our PSPS, or our Wildfire Safety Portal. We created a portal for our trusted city friends, and they can get into the portal and find things, get a little bit more information about what's happening on the ground, but not about outage times and restoration times. So what I'm referring to is really more important for folks who operate like public works, for example, like so they can get greater access to detail on the type of circuitry that's being impacted, but not necessarily, to your point, Mayor, special information about when the power is coming back on. We did not send that out. I was sending very broad-based updates and trying to keep you abreast of what was to come next, because we were seeing wind returning time after time throughout that 2-week period. So that was my whole goal, is to let you know this isn't over yet. So the information, you're right, that I sent via email was very broad. Yes.
You understand why people would be scared.
Yes.
I listened to people that were just plain frightened because their power's out. I don't have a CPAP machine, or my oxygen isn't, or whatever. And so it is critical that SCE and the city, including you and me, have appropriate communication, because there are people out there, they pay their electrical bill, but they didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an evolving picture that we need to continue to try to improve.
100%. We learned a lot from this event. We've learned a lot from every PS event that we've ever deployed. This was the largest scale one, as you know. And so I imagine we'll be learning the most out of this one. Did we do too many PSPS outages? Did we, how well or unwell did we communicate? We're going to look at everything that happened through, we're already starting this process, but we have a hot wash after all these events, and we look at everything that we did, and we try to determine where we can do better next time. And I can promise you that we will be looking at the duration of these PSPS outages, the frequency of them, and we're going to be looking at whether or not we can do them differently in the future. And so we will definitely be looking at it. Yeah, so that is a message that we are, in fact, I was on a call earlier today where that very same point was being made. We as a company need to do better what we call the cascade of information. So the information is flowing from that EOC group all the way down to people like me on the ground, and we deliver that on to you. And we need to do a better job getting that data and distributing it.
Because I think everybody that I've talked with understands the issues involved that you've eloquently described, and appreciate the advancing technology that aids with that. I think where we still have some work to do, we meaning city and SCE, is ensuring that we've effectively communicated with people so they understand. That's my primary issue.
Well, communication is the most important part of any relationship, they say, and it's very true in this case. Without question, communication is vital. Good communication is vital during these events to avoid, panics and people from being scared, and for people to be able to prepare properly, right, for what is coming next. And so we will do better. We are committing ourselves to doing better. We know we learned a lot from this event, and I can tell you we found some pitfalls, and we're going to correct them. And so the communication should improve. But I do encourage folks to go to our website, the outage map, anytime there is any kind of outage. But if there's a wide scale outage like that, again, continue to check our outage map and continue to check your emails and texts.
Can you, you may have it in here, or you might have even covered it when I missed it. When you go to that website, and I spent a lot of time on it, it's interesting and hard to understand the dimensions of the grids that are drawn.
Yes.
So, for example, I can understand the wildline interface that we very understand. I mean, we all can get that.
Yeah.
But when you have a shape like in the form of a kidney or the shape of Florida, that's like a corner of that is touching the wildland interface, and then it extends down 2 miles into flatland area, and those are all people that were turned off. Can you explain how the grids work, how different circuits work? And you may be on a circuit, Ron, but your neighbor across the street's on a different circuit. And I think that's where a lot of frustration came out. And I apologize if that was coming and I preempted you. But, that's what people don't understand. Well, yeah, I live up next to the hills, but the guy next to me, his lights are on and mine weren't.
Yeah.
And then just a couple of notes about, it wasn't just about medical equipment, things like that. I got phone calls from people that, talked about being cold because, again, we're in winter and with the winds blowing and all that, and with no power in their homes, they were cold. And several people described to me that the only way they could get warm was by taking a hot shower. Thankfully, they had a gas-powered hot water heater. That's neither here nor there. But yeah, just maybe if you can explain how the circuits work. If
Yes, thank you. It's a great question, and it's one it's probably the most common question. Why does my neighbor across the street or the neighborhood next door, why do they have power and I don't? And I don't see any wind blowing, and we're nowhere near that wildland interface. A couple of things. One, to your point, the circuitry is, I like to say that it looks like spaghetti underground and above ground. There is hundreds of circuit miles of electrified equipment below our feet and in the air. And sometimes those circuits, in broad terms, every neighborhood or every portion of a city is on its own circuit. So major portions of a city will be on a circuit. Depending on the size of your city, you'll have more circuits or fewer circuits. But the circuits are interconnected, all of them. They're all interconnected in some way. And so if one circuit here is being impacted by the high winds and the dry humidity levels, et cetera, that's at high risk for being a fire risk area, and we want to limit that risk, we'll de-energize that circuit. But it will also de-energize everyone down the line associated or attached to that circuit if we're not able to surgically prevent that outage from going that far. We're getting better at that. It's called sectionalizing, and that it points to some of the technology I talked about earlier. We're going to be doing a lot more of that, and it can't come soon enough, because imagine if we can de-energize just one small pocket of a region instead of multiple circuits in that region. So right now we are limited by physics. We very much have a lot of work to do on the grid to improve that sectionalizing. But that is why in some cases your lights will be out, but your neighbor, even across the street, might be on. It's because they're on a different circuit, or because you're on the same circuit, but we were able to sectionalize. We just couldn't sectionalize your area. So that's a quick answer to how that works. It's all tied to the physical layout of the infrastructure. And so we're very much constricted by physics in our business, of course. And so we can only take that sectionalizing so far, but I can assure you, the longer we do this work, the more sectionalizing we'll be able to do.
I was wondering, when the winds come, do the same people who were out this time end up being out every time?
Yes, and that's because it all depends on where you live. Location, of course, is everything. So if you happen to live in that doesn't mean that people in Loma Linda are going to get hit again. If you live, I'll tell you some of the areas that get hit a lot. It's Fontana, San Bernardino, Rancho Cucamonga, a lot of the cities along the foothills, right up in the foothills. And when I say in the foothills, I mean they're in the crevices. Those are the folks that are getting hit the hardest, and they get hit every single time there's a wind event because those areas are, in effect, wind tunnels. Also, the crevices of our foothills protect some crevices next door from getting wind. Maybe the wind is coming down in this crevice and heading this direction, and it's completely bypassing this section over here. So they're getting lighter winds in the city next over, and they're heavier here. That's another reason why this city might get more PSPS outages than this one. And so a lot of folks were asking, well, Fontana gets hit all the time, and it's because they are doing a lot of development in those foothill regions, and they're putting houses right up into the very crevice as far as it'll go. It's one road in and one road out in some cases, and we have to supply them with power wherever they go. So by law, we have to supply power wherever someone wants to build a home. And so as long as California allows building in those areas, we will be energizing them, and there will always be a risk there.
I was more specifically asking, if in the city of Loma Linda there are outages, are they always the same people, and the ones across the street from them are never out? And they get the same thing every time.
So every wind event is different. Every PSPS event is different. And this one impacted Loma Linda in a way that I haven't seen yet or before. And that, of course, has everything to do with the scale and scope of the wind event. We deployed PSPS outages very far and wide in this event. And so that led to all of these very uncomfortable outages in places where people didn't see a lot of wind. Will that same pocket of Loma Linda get hit again? Probably not unless there's a really severe wind event. Those areas that are outside of the foothills, and when I say, again, outside, I mean like they're not in those wind tunnels. To some extent, we all are in this giant wind tunnel, but the winds are more intense in some of those areas. And if you're outside of that area and you got a PSPS activity this last event, it's probably because the wind event was so large. If we don't get winds like that again, the likelihood is it'll revert back to whatever it was before. So if those folks hadn't been hit before with a wind event, I might suspect that would happen, that they would be fine until the wind picks up to what we saw in the beginning of January. Okay, let's move on to resources. So there are 4 categories of assistance that we provide for folks, and these are the 4 categories. I'm going to read them from the slide because there's some detail here. First, the portable power station. This is a rebate on essentially a lithium-ion battery, a big battery that you can power up before a wind event. Maybe you see our PSPS notices coming in and you say, I need to charge my power station up. I want to be able to charge my devices if the power goes out. And that's what that can do. So we offer up to 5 $150 rebates per active service account for those in Tier 2 or Tier 3 high fire risk areas. Now, I'm going to pause real quick because it's important to note that very soon, within the next few days even, the state is expected to release new high fire risk area maps. And the speculation is the Tier 2 and 3, the high fire risk areas, are going to expand. Their footprints will expand. And so would that mean then that folks who aren't currently in a Tier 3 fire area in Loma Linda be in a Tier 3? We have to see, maybe. And that will also determine PSPS events in the future as well.
Because of the South Hills, most of Loma
Correct.
Linda is in what's considered a high fire danger.
That's correct. So you have what's called very high fire risk areas all around you, and so does Redlands, and so does Grand Terrace and Colton. And why? It's primarily because of Ritchie Canyon and some of those canyon areas right behind us where there's not a lot of people living in them, but they're big canyons. And those pose the greatest fire threat to this region. It's those hilly, mountainous areas where there's not a lot of people living there. They're very steep, and that's where a lot of the trouble is coming from. So if those areas expand their footprint on the map, right, if that decision comes down, it's all of this is going to intensify for those folks, including fire insurance. It'll probably be hard to get fire insurance for those folks too.
And that's not what we're here to discuss tonight, but
Sure.
That's a major, major issue.
Yes.
Trust me, I had brown hair before I started hearing about fire insurance at Loma or home insurance at Loma Linda, and it's primarily related to what you're describing.
Yeah, none of this is going to bode well for insurance rates in California. I mean, the investments that we're making in the grid will, we're going to do our part, but there's a lot of moving parts here, a lot of industries even, and sectors in our economy that have to play a role here in order for all of us to collectively bring that risk down. Again, going back to building as one primary example. Let's go on to the portable generators. These are actual generators. That's a picture of one that we offer there. And by the way, these are all available in what we call the SCE Marketplace. I don't have a link for you, or URL, but if you Google SCE Marketplace, you will find a website with all of the instant rebates we offer on any piece of equipment or appliance that you want to buy. That includes things like, electric water pumps and water heaters, for example. We'll give you instant rebates on those if you buy them through this site. And the same goes for these devices here. So for portable generators, $200 to $600 rebate for those in tier 2 or 3 high fire risk areas. The $200 to $600 range is dependent on income level. So if you're a higher income earner, you'll be in the $200 range. And if you are a lower income earner, you'll be in the $600 range for those rebates. Let's go into the self-generation incentives. Self-generation basically means, solar and batteries. So if you are one of those customers, either commercially or residentially, there's some, you should definitely check these programs out. Rebates and incentives to eligible residential and business customers who generate their own power. You should really dig into that website to find out what all the details are on that. It gets more complicated the more we get into, when we get into more programmatic programs, as opposed to simply offering instant rebates on devices. Things get more complicated, and you'll definitely want to connect with our folks, where you can find their information on our website. Connect with them, especially if you're a commercial customer, because there's a lot of complexities there. But we offer rebates basically on batteries, is what I'm trying to make the point here. And then finally, microgrid solutions. This is really for commercial customers who want to essentially power themselves, and some businesses are doing it. More and more, we're seeing businesses do this through batteries and solar, and so we offer programs there as well. But I know a lot of the folks here tonight are concerned about the residential impacts, and so for those of you in that bucket, I would say definitely take a look at the power station and the portable generator rebates that we have on our website. Let's move on. All right. So this is a message that you've all heard so many times from the Red Cross and everybody else, but we need to be prepared ahead of disasters. It's very important. Edison trains year-round now for events like this. Very intense training. It's all led by, we're all under the same, we actually study or abide by FEMA guidelines. And so we're in the FEMA kind of organization when it comes to disasters, which is the same language that our firefighters speak and our first responders speak. So we're all speaking the same language. So that's how we're preparing. But you can prepare, of course, by doing things like having water and medicine ready to go if you need it, having those generators or portable power stations available so that you have some level of power in your home before the power goes out. So you can do those things as well. But also, just have water, have a go bag ready. These wind events aren't going away. Will they be as intense in the future as they were this year? I don't know. We'll have to find out. But we are dealing with some wind events and conditions and climate conditions that are making these disasters more intense. And so it is incumbent upon all of us to be prepared. And as it relates to the city, I mean, we love partnering with you on preparedness. And again, open invitation to all of you to visit our EOC. And we're always available. If you want more information on everything we're doing to secure the grid, modernize it, but also make it more resilient in the face of disasters, we will load you up with details. So that's the bulk of the presentation tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I was just going to make a general comment. I look back at some of your emails that you send out, and I'm not sure what the confusion is, but it's pretty clear. If you hit on the link, it'll tell you what area is hit, why is it hit, how long it's going to be. Even today, it goes neighborhood by neighborhood, and most of it right now is actually related to maintenance. Mm-hmm. So you guys do an amazing job of actually communicating. So if you got the email and you're able to have access to it, you would have known your power was going to go out with a pretty good estimate as to how long and why. So.
Thank you, Councilman, for saying that. In truth, we have gotten a lot better at displaying outage information on our outage map. Even since I've been with the company over the last 10 years, the information's gotten a lot better. It's gotten faster, and we're doing a lot more automation and again, telemetry in the field that sends information from an iPad in the field to the nerve center wherever, and we're able to update the map in real time, oftentimes from information we're getting directly from the field. Again, this PS event that we experienced in January was so big that we couldn't keep up. It was that widespread. But when things normalize and they've already calmed down, you should see any outage that you have coming to your neighborhood. It should be there on our map now.
Okay, last comments and questions. Thank you for one of the primary issues, as I've already described, that I heard about was communication. How do I know what's going on? You've addressed that effectively. Thank you. Thank you also for describing the SCE marketplace. I wasn't aware of that. The constituents in my district are probably not quite as focused on the technology as Councilman Popescu's, because I've tried to turn them to get on the web page and so forth, but that doesn't always work. And I appreciate that you have, that in your presentation, you described the incentives, because that was the second question I heard a lot about is, what am I supposed to do? I can't afford to go out and buy a generator and so forth. So I guess my question is not just to you, but to our city manager, which is how do we help SCE communicate this to people? Because I've had multiple people say, if I have to buy a generator, all right, but I can't afford it.
Well, let's jump in there real quick, because during this period, and I have no idea what the storefront looks like now, but there were no generators to be bought, including cities like Loma Linda that tried to go out and buy generators, and there were none in the market. So let's take it for what it is. Those rebates are legitimate rebates, but for several weeks, you couldn't buy a generator anywhere. They were completely sold out. In fact, we needed some here in Loma Linda because, as we discovered, there were some issues with pumping water and stuff to some of our well sites. So when government can't get them,
Yeah.
So I think the lesson also here is to be prepared in advance. Yeah. And who would have ever thought, I mean, you buy a generator if you live in Oklahoma or North Carolina, but who would have thought in Southern California, maybe that's a piece of equipment you have to have in your garage. So, what you're saying, we're expected to have more and more of this type of stuff. So,
well, I don't see it going away anytime soon. I will say, after a period of, a decade or two of doing wildfire mitigation work, will the need for PSPS go away altogether or be reduced to the point where you hardly see it anymore? I think that's possible. And that's really what we're aiming at. We want to make our grid, not only, we want to prevent fires from happening on our grid, of course, but by extension, of course, then the PSPS outages will be less frequent. So as we do this work, do more sectionalizing, do more undergrounding, do more undergrounding in the sky, the PSPS frequencies should go down over time. In the short term, though, we are dealing with this as a protocol. And I don't, I've recommended folks at another city council meeting consider getting generators. And I think some people interpreted that as my being cynical. I'm not being cynical. We need to be prepared for the next event. And it could be an outage caused by not just, a fire risk. It could be an earthquake, let's say. And if the grid goes down, you're going down too. And I know that it's a cost burden. We are buying the cost down a little bit, and I hope we do more of that in the future. I think we probably will. But those generators should be, if you can invest in them, it's highly recommended that you do. Because if all you can do is, if all you're able to do with that, let's say that portable generator or the battery is charge your cell phone.
Or keep your fridge going.
Correct. Your fridge or your sleep app machine, that's good enough to get you through. And so that's why I bring it up. It's not because I encourage everyone to strap this Band-Aid onto your local grid. It's because it's good to have. It's just good to have.
God forbid, there's another possibility too. And you talk about getting cyber attacked daily, like a lot of big companies. The city gets attacked daily. Those are realities too of a modern world. But there's also the power bank option you talked about. There's some really good deals on things like that at, like Costco and Sam's Club. But I will tell you this: I've heard this too from a lot of frustrated folks that are like, "Hey, I got solar on my house, and it's great because I have a very low power bill because I'm sending money back into the grid, but when these things happen, I get cut off also, unless you have one of those expensive Tesla battery banks."
That's correct. Yeah, solar will not help you in a major outage unless you have a battery. And so that's what one of those incentives is for the home battery or commercial battery for your business. If you have solar, it's great. You're buying down the cost of your monthly or annual bill on energy, and you're kind of being more energy independent, which is great. But a lot of folks, there's a kind of a misnomer. You cannot actually cut the cord in California. You can't go off grid. It's actually you're not allowed to for safety reasons. So that's how it's set up in our state, way above us, of course. This is at the state level. And so you're not off grid, and the only way you're going to get through an outage with solar is if, when the sun goes down, is if you have a battery.
What's the website is it on Southern California Edison?
It is, and I hate to say, just Google SCE Marketplace, but that is the best way to find it, because the URLs aren't usually super nice and neat. So I would give you a lot of backslash or forward slashes and dashes. So if you just Google that. Now we update it routinely, and we're getting feedback on the offerings that we have there. Folks are saying we want more offerings and we want greater discounts. And so we're considering all of it in light of what's going on out there. And so this website will change over time, but it's there now. We did hear during this incident that in fact, one or maybe more of the generators that we have on the website, because this is e-commerce. We don't deliver this to you during an outage. You have to buy this ahead of time. One of the things that people were finding in this event was that some of the generators, ironically, couldn't be shipped to California because of California Air Resources Board rules, CARB rules. And so that was kind of ironic because of some of these batteries, if they're relying on gas, of course, they are spewing emissions. And so CARB has put a limit on what kinds of generators we can have in our state. And apparently we had a few on our website that were not allowed here. So those have been removed. And if there's any issues that you or any of your constituents have with our website, or anything really, let me know, and I will report to that group and let them know that there's an issue with the marketplace.
Thank you.
You've come at my request. You've been answering our questions and doing a presentation for over an hour now. Thank you very much. I appreciate your candor and acknowledging where there are systems and issues that SCE is continuing to try to address. And you've also given us good information on how to deal with where we are currently. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. This is a fine city, and you deserve answers. So I'm happy to give them to you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and I'm always standing by. You all have my cell number, so if you need to text me, I'll take it anytime. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, sir. Moving on to item 2B, which is a presentation.
Just so you know, you're the first speaker that's gotten any applause for months. Yeah.
Item 2B, which is a presentation on local tobacco prevention efforts by Monica Gracian from California Health Collaborative.
Hello, good evening, City Council. Thank you, Dr. Spencer, for inviting us to come out tonight. So my name is Monica Gracian, and I'm a Director of Program Services with the California Health Collaborative, and we'll be giving a brief presentation just on some of the local tobacco prevention efforts, as well as some local data that we have. And I'll allow my colleague to introduce herself as well.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Patricia Lopez. I'm the Program Manager with the California Health Collaborative San Bernardino County Tobacco Control Program, and I oversee our day-to-day operations for our San Bernardino office and our Victorville office for the program. And I'm here just to help answer any questions as well.
Go next slide, please. So this is just an overview of what we'll be covering today. So we'll give a little bit of background on our organization and the program, a couple of state policies, so just for context of where we're at, what the new 2025 tobacco laws are that just went into effect earlier this year, some trending items and local data for the city of Loma Linda. and options for local jurisdictions, and then we'll open it up for you all for questions and leave our contact information as well. Next slide, please. So the California Health Collaborative is a statewide nonprofit organization with a mission of changing lives by improving health and wellness. We oversee a variety of different public health programs throughout the state. We also administer the San Bernardino County Tobacco Control Program, which means that we're responsible for providing education and technical assistance for communities in addressing any tobacco-related concerns that they might have. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to go briefly over some of the state laws just to give some background and context on what the tobacco prevention efforts are at the state level. Next slide. So the first one is the STAKE Act, which is the Stop Tobacco Access to Kids Enforcement Act. This was updated in 2016, and it is really what increased the purchasing age in California from 18 to 21 for tobacco products. And it also is the first time that the state acknowledged that e-cigarettes and vaping devices should be considered tobacco products, and the same tobacco regulation should apply to them as well. The STAKE Act in 2016 did have an exemption for active military, but that was removed with the Tobacco 21 law that was passed in 2019. And this law is what requires all tobacco retailers in the state of California to have this sign posted to say that they check ID and to make sure that they're abiding by the law and not selling to folks that are under 21. Next slide, please. So some other ones that are a little bit more recent that maybe you all have heard of are SB 793 and AB 935. So SB 793, or the flavored tobacco ban in California, was actually supported by California voters through Prop 31, and it went into effect in December 22 and really banned the sale of most flavored tobacco products in the state of California. So in California, tobacco retailers should not be selling most flavored tobacco products, including menthol cigarettes and any other fruit and sweet flavored tobacco products. If any of you have gone and seen a tobacco retailer, whether this be a gas station or any other store that sells tobacco products, many stores in California still have these on the shelves. Now, signed on October 7, 2023, and going into effect on January 1st, 2024, AB 935 was implemented, and it was really trying to solidify the enforcement for SB 793. So when the flavor ban passed, there wasn't a lot of enforcement or implementation tied to it. So AB 935 sought to clarify that and really align it with the STAKE Act enforcement. And AB 935 also designated the California Department of Public Health as the main enforcement agency for SB 793, because that was not previously outlined in the policy. Next slide, please. So there are a couple of new tobacco laws that just went into effect January 1st of this year, so we wanted to just make sure to highlight those first in some background and context. Next slide. So we have AB 3218 and SB 1230, which really both of them together are just focusing on strengthening the enforcement for the flavored tobacco ban that went into effect in California, because we realized that a lot of that wasn't really being implemented effectively. The changes went into effect just January 1st of this year, and they should be fully implemented no later than December 31st of this calendar year. Next slide, please. So really together, what these two laws did is that the Attorney General's office will now be creating an unflavored tobacco list, which essentially requires tobacco manufacturers to prove to the Attorney General's office that their products do not have flavors in them. Because right now, law enforcement or any enforcement agency doesn't really know if a product is flavored unless it's clearly on the name. But what we've seen is that when SB 793 went into effect, a lot of these products got changed in terms of name, and many of you may have seen the new non-menthol menthol products, which they have a menthol sensation, but they're saying they're non-mentholated products. And so it became really difficult for law enforcement and local enforcing agencies to know what was actually flavored. And a lot of folks were concerned with if they started to cite retailers for selling products and they ended up not being flavored, that it would open them up to some legal repercussions. So really with the unflavored tobacco list, and that should be published by the end of this calendar year. So the Attorney General's office has this year to publish that list. It really is helping to enforce the law, and so that way local law enforcement enforcing agencies have something to refer to when they go into these tobacco retailers. So if it's not on the list, it cannot be sold in California. It really simplifies the enforcement process. And through this, the Attorney General's office reserves the right to refuse to put on the list any vaping or e-cigarettes that have not been FDA approved. So as many of you might know, these products do not have to be fully FDA approved to be in the marketplace. They have pre-market approval, and so they're able to be sold without full approval from the FDA. These policies together also allowed for the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, or CDTFA, to actually seize these products. And this granted the authority also for law enforcement, any other enforcing agencies. So when they go in and do inspections, they can now actually remove the flavored tobacco products off the shelves, as opposed to just citing the retailer. So now they could actually take it off the shelves and issue a citation per product that is confiscated. And folks can go on the CDTFA website, and they're confiscating a lot of items already from a lot of these retailers. One of the challenges with this is obviously disposal, and that is not something that we'll get too much into today, but it is very difficult to dispose of e-cigarettes and vapes. They're considered hazardous waste, but the county hazardous waste facilities actually don't take them, so there isn't really a facility that is willing to dispose of these properly because they contain a battery and then they have the liquid. The liquid is hazardous waste, the battery is e-waste, so they would expect folks to actually take them apart and distribute the battery as e-waste and then the liquid as hazardous waste, which is dangerous for folks to do in the community to try to take these devices apart. Some of these are disposables, are actually not meant to be taken apart. There are some that are refillable that can more easily be disassembled. These two laws also strengthened and increased some of the fines under the STAKE Act, so they really did help to strengthen and enforce and all the implementation for the existing state policies that are in place. Next slide, please. So we also wanted to just present some images of trending items because I think tobacco products have changed a lot in the last couple years. They look very different than what they've looked like in the past. So we're not talking necessarily about combustible cigarettes. We're really talking a lot about these other vapes and e-cigarettes that a lot of young people use. And these look like toys. They look like electronic devices that can be connected to the computer. They can be recharged. They can plug in as a USB. So we wanted to share some images of different things of what they look like and also just some more common products that we're seeing. So next slide, please. So these are a couple of pictures of some of the trending items that we're seeing. So some of these are actually like fully functional games that youth can play, but they also are a vape or e-cigarette. And we've seen that these also can be in the shape of school supplies. So it could be a fully functioning pen or highlighter, but it also serves as a vape or e-cigarette. Then on the top right are the nicotine pouches. So those ones have actually been increasing in popularity, especially among high school students that we've seen because these are easy to hide. It's not like chewing tobacco, but you still put it in your mouth and it will dissolve and you'll be able to ingest the nicotine through the gums as well. This is synthetic nicotine, so they're sometimes marketed as tobacco-free products because it's not tobacco-derived nicotine, it's synthetically derived. But in the state of California, they are still considered a tobacco product because they contain nicotine. And so they are still addictive. And in a lot of times, they have a lot of high nicotine concentration that students don't realize how high that concentration is because they're taking in multiple nicotine pouches at once. And we have heard from school officials that some students are having seizures because they're just taking in so many of these nicotine pouches at the same time and not realizing how much nicotine they're ingesting. Now, the image on the bottom left and the bottom right are actually pictures of items that have been confiscated in San Bernardino County schools. So a school resource officer presented some of these items to show what they're seeing every day. So they're confiscating a ton of items every single day from students in the schools. And really the issue with the schools is that they can only do so much on the campus if there's access in the community to these products. Next slide, please. So we also wanted to present some local data for you all. So in Loma Linda, there are actually 11 licensed tobacco retailers. So currently tobacco retailers, unless there's a local policy in place, only have to get a license from the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration to operate as a tobacco retailer in the state of California. Most of these are concentrated on Redlands Boulevard and Barton Road. I know the map is a little small, but those red dots are where the tobacco retailers are. Currently, 10 of those stores are actually selling tobacco products, which just means that one store that has an active license may not actually be selling tobacco products currently. And this is data from 2024. So September 2024, we pulled this data from CDTFA. It's public data that folks can gain access to if they're curious of which tobacco retailers are licensed in their community. 3 of these retailers are actually smoke shops in the city of Loma Linda as well. Next slide, please. So further, we wanted to share that in the summer of 2022, we conducted decoy operations in the city of Loma Linda, which means that we went into the tobacco retailers in the city with youth that were not 21. So in this case, they were actually all 20 years old. And all they did was attempt to buy tobacco products in these stores to really see if tobacco retailers were checking ID or if they were refusing sale because they weren't 21 to be able to purchase. 5 out of the 9 stores that we visited in the city of Loma Linda actually were sold to the youth. So this was a really high underage sales rate, one of the highest we've seen in the county amongst all the cities that we've done decoy operations. And this image is actually a picture of the products the youth were able to buy. So as you can see, most of them were less than $2. So they were all less than $2 each. These are doubles. And so these are really common products that can be found at most tobacco retailers. Next slide, please. So we also wanted to highlight some public opinion poll data that we gathered in the city of Loma Linda. So we surveyed through a polling firm 350 Loma Linda residents in 2022. And I'm going to read some of these points directly off. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different questions that the residents were asked to answer. And we're happy to provide a full copy of the report as well if you all are interested in reading all of the findings. But we just wanted to highlight a couple of key points. So 76.9% of respondents indicated that they favor a policy that requires store owners to have a local license to sell tobacco. So this would be in addition to the CDTFA license that they're required to have. 70.3% of respondents indicated that they would support the elimination of tobacco sales in their community. And 64.4% of respondents indicated that they favor a policy that sets a minimum pack size for tobacco products. So as you all saw, in some of these stores, doubles are available. In many stores, singles are available, which is that they can just buy one little cigar and cigarrillo. You can't buy it. You're not supposed to be able to buy a single cigarette, but you can buy one little cigar cigarrillo, and those are usually 50 cents, $1, $1.50, depending on the store. Next slide, please. So I know this is a little bit small to see, but these were just some other key points that we wanted to pull from those survey responses. One of the questions I was asked was how easy or difficult they believed it was to obtain tobacco products in their community. And the majority, about 85%, said very easy or somewhat easy to be able to get tobacco products in their community. They were also asked if they thought there were too many places in their community that sell tobacco products, and over half of them said yes, that they believed that there were too many places in their community for which they can get tobacco products. We wanted to highlight this quote. So we had an independent evaluation consultant evaluate the data that was collected. And this was sort of their concluding statement that they provided at the end of the report, which says that most respondents believed tobacco products were harmful to one's health, that fewer people would use tobacco products if they were harder to obtain, and that the City Council should take action on tobacco sales. Overall, there was strong support for a variety of policies that would limit or eliminate the sale of tobacco products. Next slide, please. So after sharing all that local data, we did want to present just some options that other communities in the county and throughout the state have done in order to address underage access to tobacco products, because that's really the key. We know that the younger somebody starts using tobacco products, the more likely they are to be addicted for the rest of their lives and have to deal with that addiction. And nicotine addiction is very hard to break, and it can be really harmful, especially for young people as their brains are still developing. So it is something really serious to keep in mind, especially because a lot of these students are having access to them and they know how to get access to them as well. Next slide, please. So one of the most common ways that local jurisdictions have addressed the issue of underage access to tobacco products is through local tobacco retail license policies. So currently there are 4 other cities in San Bernardino County that have a local TRL or tobacco retail license ordinance. And these are Colton, Adelanto, Hesperia, and Victorville. So we have a lot of work to do. There's only 4 in the county of San Bernardino. But essentially, a local tobacco retail license is a policy option that requires all the local tobacco retailers to pay a license fee to the city, so that way the city can actually make sure that enforcement is done. So that is meant to pay for local enforcement of existing policies and laws. And it really just hopes that retailers will be compliant with existing laws. Next slide, please. There are 4 key components to tobacco retail licensing policies, and this is the fact that it would require all tobacco retailers to obtain a local license that would have an annual fee to it, so they would be asked to renew it annually. And it would also identify an enforcement agency. This enforcement agency could look very different. It's really meant for the city to determine the best enforcement agency. In some other communities, it's been law enforcement, code enforcement, and other city departments that have gone in and done these inspections. And the other key thing with tobacco retail licensing policies is that there are a lot of plug-in options, so that it really is meant to be customizable to fit the community's needs. Something with the state laws in California that we covered earlier was that there is no preemption in them, so that is the minimum. So cities are able to be more restrictive if they would like to be, but that is the minimum that they are expecting that tobacco retailers will comply with. Next slide, please. So we wanted to end really briefly, and I'm happy to take questions afterward, with some local tobacco grades. So the American Lung Association releases a report card every year that grades communities on how well they're protecting their residents from the harmful impacts of tobacco. And it's a little small, but there's only 3 cities in San Bernardino County that have a passing grade, and passing and barely it's a C, and that is Adelanto, Colton, and Loma Linda. So Loma Linda, you all have great protections in terms of secondhand smoke and smoke-free outdoor spaces, but if you will go down, you see in terms of protecting underage access and all that, that is scored as an F, and then some of the emerging issues, especially with the different definitions of flavored tobacco products and all of that, is also scored as an F. So we can also provide sort of the background in terms of how this report is done, but we really wanted to just highlight this was just released. This is the most updated data in terms of where these cities are So we do have a lot of work to do throughout the county. Most other cities are at a D and an F, so there's a lot of work to be done in San Bernardino County to protect communities from the harmful impacts of tobacco. So with that, I will open it for questions. I know it was very brief, but we did want to just highlight some of the local data that we've been able to capture throughout the city, and also just provide some education on what other communities here have done to address these issues. So next slide.
Monica, I just wanted to, I didn't know the data beforehand. Just my background is public health. And so I wanted to thank you for the presentation because it's very informative. You know, it's hard to hear sometimes about your city, but I think it's very eye-opening. And for me, my youngest is 10 years of age. And I really take to heart when it's minors that have access to this and potentially exposed, you know, and I want to do the things that we can do, especially the motto for our city is a city of health and prosperity, right? And that we have many, I didn't realize we had so many people selling tobacco, the additional 10 tobacco sales sites. I knew we had the 3 smoke shops. So I'm very concerned that we take steps to help to safeguard especially children, right, in our community. So I just wanted to thank you guys. I know it's very hard to come here and speak, right, and tell the community your data and the perspective, and that you guys have even done a survey back in 2022, which is incredible. So I just wanted to thank you guys for this very informative presentation.
Yeah, no, you're welcome, and thank you. And unfortunately, I know you mentioned 10 years old, but we have heard throughout the county that they are starting as young as elementary school in a lot of cases. So we have definitely heard that throughout as well.
Even the items that you showed, I had not seen before. They look like toys. Like if I saw them in my child's backpack, I would not have known that was an e-cigarette. I would have thought it's highlighter. So very, very good. Thank you for sharing the pictures too.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Very detailed, and I do enjoy what you said. I'm just curious, so you're part of the California Health Collaboration? Is that the name of the organization?
California Health Collaborative.
You guys do an amazing job. Do you have the similar advocacy group against cannabis and marijuana? I'm just curious, because I'm walking around the community, I smell more marijuana and cannabis than I do tobacco, so I'm just curious, is there an effort to educate the public about the negative effects of marijuana and all that as well?
Yeah, so while our program mainly focuses on tobacco products and nicotine products, we do know there is an intersection with cannabis, and we are aware of that. So we work a lot. So Stanford has a tobacco prevention toolkit, and they also have now developed a cannabis prevention toolkit, and really talking about the triangulum. Where we see a lot of overlap is the device itself. So the vaping devices can be used in a lot of cases for tobacco or cannabis. And it becomes really difficult unless they're tested to know what's in those liquids. It's not really always easy to be able to know what's in them. So a lot of the times it's the device that we focus on because it can be used in both products. Now, we're happy to provide additional information if folks are interested in what other communities have done, because other communities have decided to do secondhand smoke protections that include cannabis smoke. So we've seen that in some surrounding communities as well, that they wanted to include cannabis in that because they want it to just be smoke-free in general. So all secondhand smoke, including cannabis smoke. So there are some education and some resources that we can provide afterwards if you'd like in terms of cannabis. But our primary focus is usually tobacco, but we know that there is an intersection and they do relate.
So it sounds like you've gone to the point where you've passed lots of legislation at the state level. Is there any effort to pass similar laws for cannabis at the state level?
So we haven't passed the legislation at the state level. We just wanted to share sort of what the state legislature has done. So we mainly provide education and technical assistance. Yeah, so there are cannabis state laws that are currently being reviewed, and some of those can be a little bit concerning because they can roll back some certain protections that have been in place for many years because of tobacco prevention efforts. So a lot of our smoke-free indoor laws, some of those are in jeopardy because some of the policies that are at the state legislature and all that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a quick sorry, Ron. I had a quick question on whether or not you know where those devices come from. Where are they manufactured?
So we can find, the CDTFA does have where the wholesalers, manufacturers, and all that. So some of that is public record in terms of where they're at. They may not be local, and distributors are sort of the middle person between the manufacturer and then how the retailers get it. I don't know if you had another question to that, but go ahead.
I guess I'm curious, are they being manufactured in the States, but in other states? Are they coming from overseas? Like where are these products coming from, if you know?
It's a combination of, but yes, a lot of these laws obviously apply to what's sold in California, so it can be hard to know where each of the manufacturers are. But something that we've seen with talking with tobacco retailers is that a lot of times they're not getting clear messages from their distributors in terms of what's actually a flavored product or not. So some retailers do want to comply and do the right thing, but the distributor is telling them it's not flavored when in fact it is. And originally, the way that the policy was written is that the retailer was held liable for that decision to sell the product, regardless of what their distributor or manufacturer did. But with the new laws that went into effect this year, it does also penalize the distributors and manufacturers, and it puts the responsibility on manufacturers to prove to the Attorney General's office that they are in fact unflavored. So that kind of hopefully helps answer the question. I know you had to step out, but hopefully that helps answer the question. So manufacturers can be all over, but really in California with that unflavored tobacco list, it will really help to make sure that they are only selling products that can be sold in California.
I do have a question. Outside of Dr. Rigsby's occasional cigar, the rest of us all agree with you. No, he does too. I mean, you mentioned 4 points about how to make this work, and one of them was enforcement. You have any recommendations? I mean, I'm at a city level. We're talking about, to deny that tobacco's a bad thing, bad way to go is like denying apple pie in America. So obviously we support it. What can we do? You've laid a few things out here. My question is, how do we enforce whatever we believe is appropriate?
Yeah, so some other communities, and I'll reference some that have been done locally. So Victorville's was the most recently adopted, and so I can talk a little bit about what Victorville decided to do in terms of enforcement. So their enforcement agency is actually code enforcement. So their code enforcement officers are going out and doing education to the retailers first to notify them that a policy has gone into effect in their city, requiring them to get a city license to be able to sell. And they are doing that. They did that initial wave of education because it's really hard sometimes for retailers to know when a policy has passed and changed. And then now code enforcement is actually going out and doing inspections and issuing citations. So really they designated that enforcement agency, but communities and cities can designate whatever enforcement agency makes sense for that particular city in terms of how they want to do it. And we're happy to provide additional assistance in terms of communities in different enforcement or implementation plans if they get to that point and want to discuss those key issues. But really with local tobacco retail license policies, it's a mechanism for local jurisdictions to have a little bit more control over what happens in their city as it relates to tobacco retailers and where they're located, and to be able to have some money to be able to fund that enforcement, because right now the way the state laws are written, communities are really relying on the state to come into that city and do an inspection. And the likelihood of the state coming in and inspecting any store in some of our cities is really slim. And San Bernardino County as a whole has an enormous amount of tobacco retailers, and for them to really come in and do inspections on all of them is very difficult. So CDTFA, the likelihood of them actually coming in, and many of y'all can see if you go on their website, they maybe hit like two stores in Fresno, 2 stores in certain big communities. And so they're not really able to go into every smaller community. So,
but ultimately, that's where the rubber meets the road. I mean, we can pass whatever kind of legislation we want to, but if there's no enforcement. So when you say City of Victorville writes up citations, what does that mean?
So they are fining the retailers. So retailers have to pay for every citation.
How much? How much money does it cost? So if I'm selling cigarettes in my store and I don't have a license to do it, what's the penalty?
Yeah, so the penalties will vary, and it could be a couple $100s for the first violation, and then that violation, the penalty goes up after each violation. And ultimately, the tobacco retailer could lose their license if they're a continued repeat offender where they're not selling. And that is really their enforcement mechanism, is that they would no longer allow them to be a tobacco retailer in their city if they continue to not comply with the existing tobacco laws.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So there's an additional, so you're saying to cover the fee, to help cover the fee for the enforcement, there's an additional license, like we develop a license is that what Victorville did?
So other communities, what they've done is that tobacco retailers are required to have a local city license to sell tobacco, essentially, and pay that fee to the city, as opposed to right now that licensing fee goes to CDTFA.
Thank you.
Okay.
We can go on to the next slide. It just leaves our contact information in case folks have additional questions for us as well.
Can you forward that slide deck, or is that
It should be in the agenda packet, I believe. Yes.
like the electronic version I'm looking for? I don't like a separate. Can I pull? If you have it, can you email it
Yes,
to
I
me
will.
separately?
I will.
Thanks. I'm going to send it to some other people. So I can't take it out of the packet to do that. Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to 2C, which is our weed abatement program. Lucky we get to spend all kinds of hours with you tonight.
I know it's been a great day spending time with you, sir. Mayor and council, I'm here to give the presentation on the fall of 2024 weed abatement program. It started the initial inspections of 300 parcels on September 6th to the 10th. Our fire inspector went out and issued 272 notices to clean property. Those were mailed out on October 1st, 2024 to the owner of record with the assessor's office. We had 11 letters that were returned. Those notices were then posted physically on the properties when we got those letters returned. Our fire inspector then went out, gave a 2-week time frame to abate the properties. October 21st and 22nd were the second inspections. If the properties were not abated at that time, then our contractor went around and did the work on behalf of the property owner. And on January 6, 2025, there was invoices sent to the property owners for the work performed to the owner of record. And they were given until February 11th tonight to pay the fees that we assessed, both the administrative fees and the contractor fees. And so I'm just here tonight to put those on the tax rolls for the upcoming. There's an addition to this weed abatement that's a little bit out of the ordinary. Is spring of last year, our contractor got caught up doing other work for the city. He was tasked with demolishing the old 2-story apartment complex behind the old post office. So some of the work that he had to do kind of got put on hold, and the notices that he sent out, or the invoices he sent to us were after the due date. So we talked with the assessor's office, and since those property owners were already notified of the bill that they were given and were never paid, we can also assess them when we put them on this tax roll. So the recommendation is recommended that the City Council receive the report of the Fall 2024 Weed Abatement Program, approve the report, the accounting of costs, adopt Council Bill R 2025-02, and establish the liens and assessments on the properties. And as of tonight, there was only one property owner that did pay prior to tonight, and that's on Exhibit C, and that's the invoice number 24011. So I'd like to take that off of the report and send the rest to the property tax. Any questions?
I thought you were pushing your button. No. Since we're talking about weed abatement, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to ask my question, but I'll take a shot at it.
Fire
We
away.
can always move it to consent calendar issue if we need to. Since the LA-related fires,
Yes, sir.
I've had several people talk with me. One of the concerns is watching palm trees explode in the fires and send embers who knows where. And so I've driven around the city. We've got a lot of palm trees with dead palm fronds hanging from them. What's the city ordinance and how do we enforce it?
Yeah, so the weed abatement program is more for open property, large parcels.
That's why I wasn't sure if this
No,
was
no,
the
but it's
appropriate
a
time to
valid,
bring it up.
no, it's a valid point, and especially after talking with Edison and their presentation, it's a great thing to bring up. There are homeowners who will contact our office directly and kind of bring up a concern they have with either their home or their neighbor's home. Our fire inspector will go out, assess the situation. If it's deemed necessary that they do need to trim up the skirts of the palm trees, because that's where that issue lies.
Right.
We'll send a manual inspection notice to the property owner, give them time to comply, and then if not, that's when we start the administrative citation process to issue citations. Typically, when we issue the citations, that's when we get the change in behavior. The property owner finally goes out, hires an arborist or a tree trimmer to trim it, and I will normally, I just want to see the trees get trimmed. I'll waive the citation at that point once the palm fronds are trimmed up. So that's kind of how the process works currently. It's a self-reporting to us. Our fire inspector will go out and
So
assess the
we
situation.
wait for somebody to complain about the issue before we address it.
On
Is
private,
that
like in the neighborhoods,
Yeah.
private property,
Yeah,
yes, sir. Public property, the public right of way, public works crew will take care of it. Private property, yeah, it's self-reporting. However, there has been times where a fire inspector will go and see a really egregious locations, but a lot of the areas that he's inspecting for fuel reduction is in more of your, large vacant parcels. It's not really in the residential neighborhoods.
Based on my community drive-through, we've got a number of
Okay.
problems. So is that my job to report or complain to you, or you're waiting for a neighbor to complain, or I'm trying to
When we're out in
understand how the process.
and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. If the fire inspector's in the neighborhood and he sees it, he'll obviously generate the notice to them. But right now, yeah, it's kind of a self-reporting, either yourself or one of the citizens. They can report to our office, and we'll go out and then assess the situation and
So
issue
if
them.
somebody complains to me, I tell them to contact you.
Please, yep.
Okay, I'm not entirely comfortable with that, because if you drive around the community, I'll go with you.
Okay.
There's a number of palm trees that have some real problems potentially, and obviously the fires of last month have made people more vigilant than they probably would be ordinarily.
Absolutely.
But I'm a little uncomfortable, to be frank, that we're waiting for somebody else to tell us what we need to do in terms of fire prevention.
Understood.
We can talk about that in
Okay.
more detail.
Yes, sir.
Is there a metric you use for, say, a palm tree? Don't get me wrong, because I see them also, but I mean, I don't know. Potentially any palm tree goes up like a match, right?
Yeah, I mean, those things are like Roman candles when they go up. Yeah.
I've seen many of them go up, and it's pretty intense and
Yep.
crazy, and we have a lot.
Yep.
But is there a metric we use to say how many fronds you can have, or what needs to be?
No, it's pretty. I mean, depending on what the species of the palm, but it's just the skirt. I mean, people don't take care of it, and a healthy palm should look just like something you see in a typical painting of an oasis, where it's just the natural green crown on top. It's when it's that dry the fronds below it that create that skirt, and and it's also really nasty. You have a lot of animals and critters that live in there as well, and it gets really dirty. So that's really, when we go out there, it's pretty obvious when it's been years that it hasn't been serviced.
And are any of those, I hate to ask this publicly, but are any of those city-owned trees? Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this?
You and I talked about this the other day. What are those evergreens that grow about 200 feet in the air? Yeah, cypress. They're been concerns about those blowing over too. I mean, does that never happen, or?
I've never seen a cypress tree, it's like palm tree, bend back up.
So we're not worried about 200-foot cypress trees? Yeah, I mean, if, I'm not an arborist, that's a citizen's question. Not a problem. Okay, thank you.
Rhonda?
All I know is Milford came and rescued our cul-de-sac because it had palm fronds everywhere when the wind came, because we have a couple rentals, and it was probably like your neighborhood. And all the community, we just kind of try to rally, but you can't put it in the trash, so what do you, because the garbage man won't take them. So I don't, he came and magically our cul-de-sac was, I don't know what he did, but yeah, we had problems because you couldn't even drive the road. The palms.
Milford doesn't live in my district. Does your company not pick up palm fronds? That's an honest question. Do we have to pay for the container you put out?
Her next door neighbor is one of my best friends. He said, there's a problem here, and I went out and took pictures, and we followed up. It was actually the city that finished it.
So the city put them in the can.
Looked at it. There were tons of prawns laying on the ground, and they were blowing all over the cul-de-sac. It was fun to be involved.
You know, one thing we can think about doing, and it just came into my head, is when we do weed abatement, the biannual weed abatement, is we can do public education and through the utility billing. So that would go out to all the residential neighborhoods on maybe giving resources on when to trim the palm trees. I think a lot of it comes down to education. Most people think that's what a palm tree is supposed to look like with the dirty skirts. And so if we're able to send out public education through our app, social media, and do the utility billing on what right looks like when we do the biannual weed abatement, that might help cut back and kind of remind people that they need to take care of it.
No, that's a good point. And I think that's a good idea.
Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around the fact that if somebody lets weeds grow up on their hillside to 12 inches or more, we're going to cite them if they don't take care of it. But they can have palm fronds that grow halfway down the tree, and we don't worry about it. I'm not quite, it's not computing for me. But we can deal with that at another time. It's not agendized.
Okay. I think with this item, we need a motion as well before I leave.
It's a public
It is
hearing.
yes, it is a public hearing.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions? Okay. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? All right, we're going to close the public hearing and we'll look for a motion.
I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a first and a second.
Thank you.
Motion is to accept the Fall 2024 Weed Abatement Program Report, to approve the report and accounting cost, and to adopt Council Bill R-2025-02, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Loma Linda, California, adopting a report and statement of expenses for the Fall 2024 Weed Abatement Program and imposing a lien upon properties for payment thereof, as recommended by staff. I will take your vote, please. Councilmember Rixby and Mayor Pro Tem Daley, your vote didn't register.
You almost got to hit it with a hammer.
Yeah. I vote in support of it, even though it doesn't show up on my screen. But
Okay.
all right.
Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're actually going to move backwards. Apparently, we had some folks that wanted to speak on 2B, and we didn't recognize that. So we're going to move back here. Let me see if this pulls up. Okay. does it go top down? Who was the first person to sign up?
Top down, top
Okay.
from the first.
All right, let's go Mr. Israel Fuentes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council and members of the audience. My name is Israel Fuentes. I am the chair for the Coalition for Tobacco-Free San Bernardino County, board member and clerk for the Colton Joint Unified School District, and the community liaison for Young Visionaries. Our coalition is made up of organizations, governmental agencies, and volunteers who all share a passion for promoting a healthy, tobacco-free lifestyle. Today, you listened to a presentation that had information about state laws pertaining to tobacco as well as local data relevant to Loma Linda. As a coalition, we share your feelings of concern, given that over half of the stores in Loma Linda sold tobacco to products to underage youth. Other communities in San Bernardino have taken action to protect their youth against the harms of tobacco, had much lower underage sale rates, but they all agree that even one store selling to an underage youth was too many. I would like to encourage the city of Loma Linda to take actions in reducing youth access to tobacco by adopting a local tobacco retail license ordinance, as other cities in San Bernardino County have already done. To assist in these efforts, I have some educational policy packets for the council to learn more about what other cities have done and examples of comprehensive model policies. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the coalition, and we are happy to provide further assistance. Thank you for your time. And if you get a chance, when you go through our packet, and this is what I'm going to leave, I'll leave it here with the clerk. Feel free to come on to our coalition website, and there is some videos that we did. There's a video I did there, a PSA, public service announcement, a couple of years at one of the high schools here in the Inland Empire. And when you see that, the products that I brought forth in that video was maybe about one of those Ziploc bags, about this big. And that was only in the first 30 days of school. So when you see that video, you'll be amazed, and you'll hear a little bit of information about what tobacco and vaping does to our students. Thank you.
You know, maybe you can answer the question.
Yes.
Do you think, where do you guys think a lot of those products are getting distributed? I mean, obviously, we're talking about the storefronts, but are there other places? I mean, they're getting this stuff offline. I mean,
yes, you can get them online. You can go to Amazon, eBay. Sadly, even our ice cream guys are selling these under the table to the kids.
That's what I'm like.
That's the reality of what's going on. We have those vendors, street vendors, that are out there selling them to the kids, for $1, $2.50, whatever, pocket change. Through Amazon and the eBays, of course, they don't ask your age. You get the packet at home discreetly. It doesn't say what it is. Boom, kids get it. So the opportunities for the kids to get them are everywhere. But when you have a smoke shop or a retailer that doesn't ask for IDs or anything like that, or even even a 10-year-old can walk into a retailer that sells tobacco and get products like that, because it's either let's make the money, they don't care about the kids. And in our nation, throughout our nation, we have over 3 million kids that actually vape, and they buy these products, and it's sad. I've been interviewed by Telemundo and NBC on the products that are being sold out there. As a board member, and I'll change my thing here, as a board member for Colton Joint, we've had kids from 8-year-old, 9-year-olds vaping in the bathrooms. The issues out there. And I think each and every city, county needs to take care of it, and we can work together to make a difference, because as soon as a child gets into that, their growth stops. And I'll give you a quick example, and then I'll take off. Vaping is like putting a spray can of spray paint in your mouth and pushing the spray. Technically, it will damage your lungs the first time you even try it. That's how bad it is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Laura Cortez.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor Duper and the City Council. My name is Laura Cortez. I'm a senior at Redlands High School and a Loma Linda resident. As a young person, I am a tobacco industry's main target, and by creating tobacco products that appeal to youth, they aim to create long-life customers. While we might not be able to solve the tobacco epidemic among youth overnight, we can try to make changes locally that affect the youth you serve. I am here today to urge the City Council to make a stand in protecting me and my peers against the dangers of tobacco products by adopting a local tobacco retail license ordinance. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for coming to present. It's really great to see you do this and take a stand.
Thank you.
Okay, Ann Barrett Peterson.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I am privileged to be able to make a comment this evening. My name is Anna Barrett Peterson. I'm a tobacco control researcher. I have joint appointments at the School of Nursing and School of Public Health at Loma Linda. And I also am a member of our Cancer Center's Transdisciplinary Tobacco Research Program. So our research spans from basic science to community-based interventions. And much of our colleagues' research has focused on the tobacco exposure's impact on the epigenome, our body, where our body stores our record of chemical changes to the DNA and proteins. And this research is very compelling. It has shown that babies whose mothers smoke during pregnancy grow into adulthood facing higher risks of abnormal heart, lung, brain function, and long-term disease outcomes like neurological diseases and cancers. I am currently funded by the state of California to implement an intervention focused on supporting pregnant women, pregnant persons who want to smoke. And we are implementing an intervention addressing tobacco-related health disparities with community health workers. And just as has been outlined here, this is only just getting much, much more complex. We were funded initially to look just at cigarette smoking, but quickly became, we can't just look at cigarettes. We have to look at vaping. We have to look at cannabis. And so we're going back to the drawing board, trying to understand how all of the interplay between all of these products, and it only gets much more complex. And I will keep my comments limited, but I would underscore that this is a pediatric disease. It starts early, and but 50% of women who become pregnant will quit spontaneously, but the other 50% are unable to quit, even knowing what damage it's doing to their child. And we're trying to come alongside those. So I'm excited that the council invited our coalition leadership here. We are honored to work with them, and I'd love to see our city be one of the leaders and take this on and take this report seriously, and would like to support it any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And sorry we didn't see your names up here for speakers. I wonder if there's a system prompt that can give us like a flag or something. I don't know. I mean,
it does give us and that was part. Monica, because I know she came to check on our speakers. I showed 2 speakers, and I thought it was you 2 young ladies who came to speak. So my apology on that. But it does have like the little symbol with the number. And so, and I will, oh, you don't have that?
No.
Okay. And I saw 2. So I just will have to be checking.
Well, no. I mean, obviously, this is a pretty new system we've got here, and we're working through the problems. We've had some challenges with it, so it's not a big deal. If you have a little number of that, I don't have that.
Oh,
So as we're going through agenda items, it'd be nice if we saw that so we knew, because otherwise, without clicking through here, you wouldn't see there were speakers in the digital form.
and I will.
You guys don't have that.
And I can
talking about that.
check with the software
No,
company
that's
on
not
that.
right, because there's actually 3. Yeah, no, I know, but under the actual, when you hit the speakers button, there's 3 over here. See it? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we could ask them, the company or whatever. I don't know. We spent good money on this thing.
I will.
Okay. Thank you guys very much for allowing us to work through that. Moving on to 2D, which is a joint meeting of the City Council and Housing Authority regarding the 2024-25 mid-year budget. Sonia.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Temp, members of the council, city staff, and members of the audience. Thank you all for staying. Thank you for joining us tonight as we present the City of Loma Linda's mid-year budget review for fiscal year 24-25. We're having trouble advancing this slide.
Maybe the battery's dead.
Yes. Thank you. We will start by presenting the general fund revenue changes. An analysis was done across the board to look at the 5-year historical average as well as a review of the revenue received to date. For some of the numbers that were provided from different agencies, I will notate which ones those are. So first we start with property taxes. Property taxes has projected a decrease of $33,800, and this is based on numbers provided by the auditor controller. Franchise fees are estimated to come in $3,500 less based on receipts year-to-date and trends from prior year. Sales tax is projected to come in $82,900 lower than projected, and this number comes from the city's sales tax consultant, HDL. License and permits increased by $86,300, as we are seeing an increase in building and fire permits as well as fire plan checks. Use of money and property, projecting $206,000 increase. The LAIF interest rate has held consistently in the 4% range, and that's what has increased. For the initial projections, I used a 3.75 rate, and it's holding at 4%, so we went ahead and corrected it. Intergovernmental is projected to decrease by $74,800 due to VLF, property tax in lieu. This number was provided by the County of San Bernardino. Other revenue include charges for services, overhead, refunds and reimbursements, and miscellaneous revenue. Charges for services include an increase of $336,700 and includes fees for planning and engineering plan checks. Overhead increase of $325,700 is based on projects approved through supplemental appropriations. And refunds and reimbursements, the increase that you see here of $943,500 is due to projected mutual aid reimbursements for fire incidents for the remainder of the year. And then operating transfers increased due to changes in funding from gas tax. This next slide is the general fund expenditure changes. Administration is showing a net $15,700 increase. The major requests are for HVAC unit for the senior center and an insurance adjustment. However, these are offset by salary savings due to positions being vacant for half the year. Community Development is requesting $46,300, mainly for the building permit inspection contract due to an increase in planning permit activity. Police Services we're requesting an increase of $73,800 for sheriff overtime and general services projected for the remainder of the year. Fire Services, the total request is $1,541,000. However, the main increase is the overtime of $1,485,000 for fire strike teams and regular overtime coverage. The remainder is for an increase in operational costs for the department. And lastly, Public Works, the total request is for $460,000. Some of the items needed are an HVAC system for the community room, roof maintenance, radios, battery packs for intersections, street signs, park supplies, and miscellaneous operational costs for the remainder of the year. The total expenditure changes are $2,136,800, and for revenue changes, it was $1,745,500 increase. This slide shows a summary of the general fund balance. We started off the year with audited numbers, and we adjusted for any accounts receivable and any accounts payables that were due close to the beginning of the year. We have revenues and resources that were totaled $28,460,000, and then expenditures of $29,436,600. The changes that we saw in the previous two slides are included in those numbers, and we're projecting a decrease in fund balance of $976,600. Of that number, if you remember at the beginning of the year, we had projected a deficit of $407,000. That's included in this new number, as well as some supplemental appropriations that were approved throughout the year up until January. So the ending available unassigned fund balance is $16,074,773,000. General fund assigned and committed budget is not changing, and so the total balance of the general fund is projected to end at $19,324,773 if you approve these changes that were shown in the previous two slides. This slide is a graph to show the expenditures by department for the general fund. As you can see, public safety makes up 63% of the general fund expenditures, and that includes fire and police and other safety. Administration makes up 11%, community development is 4%, and lastly, refuse and public works combined make up 22% of the general fund budget. The following slides will go over all the other funds for the city, and we'll start with the sewer fund. The same analytical procedures were used to calculate the change in revenue as previously mentioned. The sewer fund has an increase of $281,100 in charges for services, and it's reflected on this slide. Of that $281,000, $160,000 is a pass-through to the city of San Bernardino. $38,800 is due to interest earnings. Loma Linda Connected Communities has a slight increase in interest revenue and network certification charges due to new homes being built by Lennar. Water shows charges for services that were analyzed, and a $260,000 increase is projected due to the water rates increase. Rates increased June 1st, 2024, and then again January 1st, 2025. Other funds, the major increase in other funds, particularly the capital funds, is an increase to development impact fees. Special revenue funds increase in interest as well, and then grants show an increase of $57,900 due to an increase in CDBG funding, and COPS grant increase due to interest revenue. So the total changes that we see in revenue is $5,441,400. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to show that Housing Authority shows an increase of 9,400, and that's also due to interest calculation. This is a slide that shows the changes in expenditures that are being requested for your approval. The sewer is requesting an increase in expenditures of 172,300, with 160,000 of that being for the sewer pass-through to the city of San Bernardino, and it's offset by the revenue that we saw in the previous slide. Connected Communities is requesting 2,600 for increased operational costs for the remainder of the year. The Water Fund is requesting 129,300 for the addition of a position in water distribution, as well as for the migration of the ERP system to software as a service, an insurance adjustment, and miscellaneous operating costs for the remainder of the year. The Special Revenue Fund transfer out has increased by 11,400 as both gas tax and traffic safety fund transfer out to the general fund to assist with street-related costs. Since that revenue is coming in a little bit higher, that's why the increase is being transferred out to the general fund. Special Districts is showing a decrease of 60,100 as a result of utility costs being recalculated and coming in lower than projected for the Land Maintenance District. And lastly, capital funds show an increase of 491,700, and it is mainly for overhead on projects approved through supplemental appropriations during the year. The majority is a water acquisition fund for the remaining portion of the 1.6 million gallon reservoir. This page summarizes the change in fund balance by type. Throughout all the funds, audited fund balance or retained earnings numbers were used. The accounting fair value adjustment for investments was backed out to give a true available amount. The net change in fund balance or retained earnings for the sewer is a decrease of 595,100. Connected Communities is a decrease of 132,600. And for the water, 485,700. Enterprise capital funds shown at the bottom show a positive net change of 811,300. Even though the expenditures for the reservoir increased through supplemental appropriation, the anticipated increase in development impact fees offset the cost and therefore increased the balance. The final slide summarizes the fund balance for the rest of the city funds categorized by type. As previously mentioned, the largest change is seen in the capital projects funds, with fund balance projecting to increase by 6.3 million due to anticipated development impact fees on projects within the city. The special revenue funds show a decrease of 436,500 due to Measure I projects such as widening of California Street and pavement rehabilitation at various locations. Detailed information on the numbers shown throughout this presentation can be found in staff report and the agenda packet.
Okay, any
In
questions?
conclusion,
Oh, sorry.
in conclusion, staff would like to recommend council approve an increase citywide in revenues of $5,441,400 and $2,884,000 in expenditures. And we'd like to thank all the departments for helping us put together these numbers.
Questions?
Question on the fire department, $1.5 million increase in overtime. You said it was due to the strike team. So how much of that do we anticipate we're going to get reimbursed? Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm pausing like I expect an explanation, but I guess we'll turn to the chief then.
Yeah, unfortunately.
$600,000, that's a
yeah,
heck of a lot of money for a
continue
little city.
to suffer with multiple injuries. We've kind of been regularly having 2 to 3 of our personnel off on injury. I have 2 off right now. And then plus we've been struggling with hiring like a lot of the areas has. We ran a test recently in which we weren't able to get a viable candidate. So we've continued to run that spot open, and we're trying again to test for that spot now. So we've been kind of struggling in our staffing area for several months.
But don't we have insurance that covers injuries and time off for injuries?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Doesn't cover
not
the
the
backfill.
overtime side of it.
You have to backfill.
But that was part of what you were saying, is that we've been short
Well,
on
the
staff because of injuries.
The insurance covers for the injured person,
Injury,
but the person who's working behind them, which is what the overtime cost is, that's not covered.
All right, I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but now I understand it. Go ahead.
Did we get does this include the survey? Like we did the survey for Public Works and Fire. So do we get the results back from the salary surveys? We don't have the result, because is that going to impact this? Like, I don't know, one direction or another. Do we take into account if that salary survey comes back and we're low, do we have to fix this, or it won't impact this?
Not it's going to impact this. This is the actual cost.
This is through when? This is through
June 30th.
Okay, so we won't have to worry about if we have to pay increase before June 30th or anything like that.
Correct.
Right.
And then the whole next fiscal year,
The
a whole different
next one
story.
is gonna.
Yes.
Do they anticipate when they'll give the salary survey back, or we don't know?
Well, I will have some number by the next city council meeting at the
Okay.
closed session.
Okay. Okay, so that doesn't impact this. Okay. Thank you.
I've got several more questions. I mean, yeah, I'm not stunned by this because we had a workshop, a budget workshop, August, September, something like that. And this is the very issue that the city manager was predicting, that we would see loss of revenue on some things. But I still want to drill it down a little bit. Property tax, how is it we're down 33,000 plus on property tax?
We get a letter from the auditor controller that projects out what we will be receiving. And this year, it just happens to be a little bit lower. I'm not sure if they're the collections for the new
So
homes
our budgeted projections and their projections were off by 33,000 bucks.
Yes.
Okay.
I estimate 2% every year because that's what they tell us to estimate.
Yeah.
But based on the letter that we received, they're a little bit high. So
And then sales tax, that I didn't get the number down, but that was significant too. Do we have any sense of why sales tax is down substantially?
the reduction was 82,900.
Yeah.
And that's also analyzed by HDL, and these are the numbers that they're projecting to come in lower.
We have a couple of businesses that went out of business and or move out of town. So yes, we have a lower sale tax.
Okay. I guess my global dilemma is that, again, we discussed all of this stuff months ago, and there was a proposal that we increase the tax by 2 cents, sales tax in the city by 2 cents.
1 cent. 1
I
cent.
thought it was originally 2 cents.
No, it was 1 cent, and we offered a 50 or half cent as a negotiating plea, but we weren't able to gain traction with that.
Okay. So we lost out on that. So now we're beginning to sink. We're still fine. We're still afloat, but we're beginning to sink. And I commend Councilman Spencer Wang because she's got a revenue generating committee that's at work, and I'm eager to be part of that when it's appropriate. But this is amazing. I'm going to vote to approve it because basically I feel like I've got no choice because we saw this coming and now it's here. But a year from now, it's not going to even look this good. And so I'm suggesting the city council's got to get our act together in terms of doing some serious budgeting to ensure that we stay afloat as we always have been. And I don't care if we have a tax increase or if we, bring Nordstrom's in that moves here or whatever it takes. But we've got to start figuring this out. So I don't want to just approve it without comment. My comment is, I'm worried. I'm concerned. And so I commend Councilman Wang and for her efforts, and I think the rest of us need to really pony up on this too, to figure out how we're going to ensure that we don't continue to have this kind of a budget issue. You have any comment? Am I wrong about any of this?
No.
I don't want to overstate things.
No, you're not wrong. Yeah, coming years is going to be a little bit harder, especially with what's going on in the U.S. and
Yep. It's
tariffs.
Okay.
Everything going on. Yeah.
So at this point, I vote to approve. I will move to approve it, but also be on notice that we've got some serious homework to do in terms of budgeting for the city. Thank you.
Do we have a second? Yeah. Okay, we have a first and a second.
Second.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk?
Motion is to approve, excuse me, motion is to approve the 2024-25 mid-year budget for the overall city, a net increase in revenues of $5,441,400 and a net increase of expenditures of $2,884,000 as presented by staff. Please vote. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the consent calendar.
Move it.
Second.
First and a second, Madam Clerk.
Motion is to approve the consent calendar as submitted. Please vote.
I'm pushing the button. I promise you.
I believe it. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, nothing under old business, but we do have one item under new business and probably some stuff from council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, a little background. Back in 2002, the city established the trail development committees to look into the trail along the Edison easement and also the trail up in the South Hill. And since then, and Councilwoman, you were there as a trail committee members, and Jamie was there as a committee members. And since then, we have completed a lot of requests for the South Hill Trail and Edison Easement Trail. We put in the names, we put in the improvement in the trails. So we pretty much completed what was request for the committees. And plus, right now, we only have 2 members left in the trail committees. And a lot of times, we just want to have a quorum at the meetings. Similarly, with the Park and Beautification Committee, we have 2 vacant positions. One is Mr. Dick Wiley, passed away, and Mr. Kirk Swacker, he moved out of town. So we only have 3 members. So, and a lot of time is we don't have a quorum for that. And so I talked to both committees, and what do we think about combining the 2 committees and move the trail members into the park committees, and they said they agree. So I would like to request that the city council approve to combine the 2 committees.
Would the name be that long, or
No, we just leave it at Park Beautification Committee. We don't need a trail anymore.
No, the Trails Development Committee for the Beautification of Parks, Recreation, and something else.
So that long. I usually just call Park and Beautification Committee.
Whatever you want to call it. I don't think it matters.
Well, that was the name that was there before, so we can leave it the way it is. We just, because we don't have quite a recreation department yet, so. But we have new pickleball courts, yeah.
Which I'm going to ask you about when we get to council member comments, unless you want to address that now. When, okay, let's.
I second.
First and a second. While we're voting, what's the ETA in opening the pickleball courts?
It's already open, sir. People
Okay.
are paying with it.
When did that happen?
This weekend.
Oh, okay, because I was getting complaints Friday
About what?
that they weren't open.
Oh, yes, it's open this weekend.
Oh, okay. So,
And we're still waiting for,
Ernie out there in the great beyond, wherever you're at, you're watching, you're listening. There, now you got the answer. He was angrily texting me on Friday afternoon.
I mean, Jarb will tell you, part of the reason we have the new pickleball courts is I was getting flooded with frustration that we didn't have enough pickleball courts, so I'm not.
I'm glad you took it on. I took it on for a long time, and I didn't seem to get any traction with it. But.
Well, they can come over in our neighborhood because ours is not being utilized. We have a fairly good pickleball court that's sitting empty, so over on the El Medingo Park.
They've been there. They've been there for a few years. I think it's park preference syndrome. Anyway, okay. Any business from the council members?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I was going to
I'm
say the motion.
I'm so sorry.
So motion is to approve to merge the Trails Development Committee with the Parks Recreation and Beautification Committee, maintaining the name as the Parks Recreation and Beautification Committee. I will take your vote, please. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. Reports of council members.
I just want a general announcement. I had the pleasure of meeting our new assembly person's field rep, Ulysses, who is here in the audience. I know he walked in, and I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, but we had a really good meeting about some things that we can work together with our assemblyman who's representing the city of Loma Linda.
I can come up, right? Good evening, council and mayor. My name is Ulysses Nera. I am the field representative for the city of Loma Linda on behalf of Assembly Member Robert Garcia, who's newly elected to the assembly. I did have the pleasure of speaking with council member, when was it? I feel like it was such a long time ago, but it was just this week. Last Friday, yes. And we spoke about a couple of his priorities for the city that I likely will go through a budget request through the assembly. The way that budget requests go, they are money allocated to cities for like a one-time project. One of the things that the council member mentioned was updating the fiber optics network in what part of the older part of the city that doesn't have that upgraded infrastructure yet for fiber optics. But it could be anything that the council thinks of. I sent you all an email, and I'll send another one with an introduction for y'all to be able to submit your ideas. And if you wanted to meet with me individually, I'm happy to do so. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to be available for you for whatever you need. I just ran out of business cards. I was in Redlands and I got swarmed, so I ran out of business cards. But I will email you all individually, or if I can take some of your business cards, if you have some handy, I'm happy to send you all an email.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
You want to hear about the revenue generating committee, for better, for worse? So we had our revenue generating committee a few weeks back, and it was really good. We had about 15 people in attendance, And actually, it was very interesting to see the support. At times, it was heated. People are very passionate about their angle for generating revenue. But we started with kind of a past, looking at the past, was Loma Linda known for? And the past was really focused on health, the sanitarium, right? And even agriculture is what was here. The present is looking at our hospital, our university. We're known for our hills and this kind of small community feel. And this is just really a highlight of what we went through. Andrea was there, Milford was there, there was a number of other people that were there, and it was just really great. The future they're looking at, the future what the Community Revenue Generating Committee was thinking about is really a health-related future. How do we talk about how do we embrace our identity as this kind of blue zone? How do we do that? And how do we become innovative and reconnecting with some of our old roots? So the next thing we did was a SWOT analysis. We looked at our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats. And we just kind of put it on the board. Nobody, there was no right or wrong answer. It was all just perspective, right? And one of the strengths was really the identity of our community, of course, where National Geographic is coming, because we're this blue zone, that no other, and your strengths is really things that no other community or very few community shares. One of them that came up and Chandra left is our hospital is world renowned, right? And we really have this unique and supportive community. Another great aspect, though not so much as a strength, but definitely because other places have it, but one was the overall, when you look at it as a whole, was the cleanliness of the city. And then relatively safe, though, we always have hotspot areas, but overall. So that was some of the strengths. And granted, I'm not going to go in. We had huge lists and just whiteboard what everybody was saying, and it was hard to keep up at times. Some opportunities were, or I could go to the strengths. I don't think I wrote down. The weaknesses might possibly be resistant to change. And that's hard anywhere you go, right? Like change people don't necessarily want to embrace, but sometimes we have to do that to move forward. Another weakness for our community was no downtown. The students, so this was a wide range of people that were specifically invited, from students to family members to business people. Andrea helped me identify some great business opportunities. But one of the things was no downtown, and the students and some of the families, like the moms pointed out, not a lot of activities. So students are Ubering into Redlands for food and things like that, or special activities. Another thing that was pointed out as a weakness was the landscape near on Redlands Boulevard and near the freeway. And another weakness was possibly if we have limited manpower to help develop what we want to do. Some opportunities were around, we have an incredible opportunity with the hospital that was pointed out. If we bring in these thousands of employees every day to work at that hospital, there was the thought of how you're capturing them to eat lunch here. How are you capturing their business, right? Do you have opportunities? And that was George from the hotels was even saying, food. One of your key things for generating revenue in a place where you have this huge influx is your food offerings, right? So thinking about that. Another thing was talking about if you want businesses to come here, really looking at your landscape. Is your landscape at all angles? Because some angles is really good, other angles are saying, when you look and see. And the landscape may not just be the trees and the vegetation, but even what existing businesses that you have, right? So thinking of that. Opportunities, embracing, one of the key opportunities that came up time and time again was embracing our wellness identity. How do we do that? From the food to the activities that we have to the businesses, things like that. And I know I'm not going to sound exciting, but one of the things people did throw out there was the possibility of rechecking the tax. Do you want to have a tax or not? That was an opportunity. Some of the threats was the worry of gentrification, and as we develop, we move away from our values and our culture of what Loma Linda started as, right? And then there was worry that paralysis by analysis, meaning if we start to do this and we don't do anything and we don't try to generate revenue, but we just sit around and think about it, it sometimes happens. Another one they pointed out, you are a city of no beer or wine. I guess despite the fact that they pointed out Jesus turned water into wine, we have no beer or wine here. So that may be too many cars, the regulations that may come, and the costs, the rising costs, right? So these were all things, and they're worried that we're losing the Blue Zone identity. So I had to, say, I understood what they were talking about. So next steps, I think we are already planning meetings with Andrea and then the city manager and the assistant city manager to really begin thinking about how do we take and begin implementing any or developing strategies. And then we're also going to go back. This committee, though you advised me, was quite large. And yes, they're looking at me. It was 15 plus or minus a standard deviation of 4. So it was a large committee. And so the next time we meet, we'll probably scale down and invite a key few people, probably in March, to really begin setting, okay, what's the strategy? What are the businesses that we'd like to see? How does that embrace our motto as a city of health and prosperity? So I guess it's exciting, more to come, probably in March.
I want to commend your effort to try to, we either have to reduce expenses or increase revenue. So my hat's off to you. Anybody, I mean, I'm sure we've got a vast television audience out here. If they want to provide you more input on the SWOT analysis, how do they reach you?
Just send it to, well, they can get to Lynette and she can get to me, or they can, if they like my email at the university, rspencer@llu.edu, or they can get me through Lynette. I'm working right now to get better access to my city one, but those are 2 ways. And Lynette has me on speed dial.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? We're good. All right, I think we're going to move past the city council agenda and into the
Report of officers. You're not. No, I didn't know if you were reporting anything, Jarb. Assistant City Manager, introduction.
Yes, yeah.
Andy Ramirez, we have a new assistant city manager, so I'd like to welcome him, and he will be the one who take care of the economic developments.
Andy, this is a short meeting. Typically, we go till after midnight, and usually it'd be good for you to give a speech of about 20, 30 minutes, if you'd like.
I do look forward to working with you all. It's a pleasure to be here. My family and I have had our health care here in Loma Linda. My son spent 2 summers on prostate cancer research at the university. And so it kind of feels like coming back home. But I'm new here, so I'm excited. Thank you.
Welcome. Anything else Jarb needs to do? Okay. All right. Okay. Which, I know you told me you want to do housing.
Successor agency, please.
Successor agency first. Okay.
It'll just take me a second to.
All right. As we get going, any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Anybody from the public wishing to speak on a non-agendized successor agency item, please come forward. Milford, you're still here.
I'm sorry to say this is my first time at the City Council after 40-some years of residency in Loma Linda. Geir Freevold is my name. I'm a retired cardiologist at the VA. I came here for this discussion on tobacco, and I saw that you listened to it, but there was no action. What's the plan forward? Do we hear he's going to leave a booklet, or is there plans for action on it? we should be the blue zone, the leader in this area, and not the tail?
It's protocol. It wasn't an action item, it was a presentation, as I
Yeah, but
understand it.
is there follow-up? Or was it just into free air? Is there a plan for follow-up or no?
If someone decides to follow up with it, all they have to do is put it on the agenda and pass the ordinance, as simple as that. So the goal is that once you've educated us, one of us can take the initiative and run with it. It's simple as that. We don't necessarily have to express our viewpoint, but most likely someone's going to do it.
So he's going to leave a booklet with instructions of how to go forward, and someone here will take action.
It would involve more than leaving a booklet. Somebody needs to be an advocate for it and work with the city clerk to develop a proposal that would come to the city, ultimately come to the city council.
I nominate Dusty.
Well,
well, there you go.
To take it a step further, and this is we're actually in the wrong session to even be talking about this now.
Okay.
We should have.
But it's okay.
We should have talked about it back in
But
city council.
It's not on the successor agency agenda, so he can talk about it.
What I think the responsible thing to do for any proposal that would come forward is to ask staff to analyze it, because inherently anything that comes in front of us is going to have hidden costs. So my first question would be to reach out to my counterparts at Victorville and Hesperia and Colton to ask them exactly why they decided to do what they did, how they did it, and what were the costs with it. We don't have a robust code enforcement unit here. We have one employee. We don't have a large police force. We contract with the sheriff for hourly rates. So looking at all those factors, we have to decide. Victorville has like 7 or 8 code enforcement officers. So I don't think you get an argument from anybody up here in terms of what we personally believe. We also have to make sure we almost have $1 million deficit in our budget, which means we may have to cut services for things like law enforcement and stuff like that. So we have to carefully weigh. So to react and vote on something that somebody brings in right the night that it comes in is just not the reality of how it works. So we'll see what the city brings back to us.
But if we have a profile of a healthy prosperity and health city, shouldn't it be kind of a priority item? And who is it that supports that kind of proposal?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. That's why my earlier comment was to say you don't like apple pie is un-American. Of course, we are fully supportive of the concept of eliminating tobacco if that was even possible. But it's a process. As the mayor says, there are costs involved in anything we approve. And we just finished talking about the fact that where if we sustain what we currently have, we're in a sinking ship. So we've got to reverse some things. We've got to either reduce expenses or increase revenue. That's what Councilman Spencer Wang is working on with her committee. So I don't
mean,
something.
Councilmember Daley, I don't mean to interrupt, but we can't be discussing this. This item was not on the agenda for us to take action, and now we're discussing it.
Okay.
So
fair point.
We can't.
Okay.
We shouldn't.
Thank you. My first time here, it may be the last.
Okay, any other comments on non-agendized successor agency items? Lots of good stuff to talk about here if you want to come out and talk about it. This is where we do housing for people and things like that. So, all right.
Consent calendar for the successor.
Let's move the consent calendar.
Move it. Second.
Motion is to approve the consent calendar as submitted. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, any reports of members, reports of officers? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Housing Authority. We already have the Housing Authority open. Any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
All right, any?
Mr. Mayor, we have a really quick closed session item on
On
the
Housing
agenda.
Authority?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Do you want to do that now or after we take the consent calendar? Does it matter?
No, it's up to you.
Why don't we take the consent calendar, and that way if
Move it.
anybody wants to leave, they can leave. We have a first.
That was a second.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
I'm sorry, no, I'm not going that fast. Motion is to approve the consent calendar on the Housing Authority agenda as submitted. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to adjourn to closed session, and hopefully we're back out in 10, 15, 20, 30, 3 hours, 4 hours.
You guys know her, so you want to just kind of.
Good, how are you? Jordy doing good? You're welcome. Good. Coming back. Good. Good to see you. Where should I see you? Well, no, I just did that as a city. I represent CRNR, the waste hauler for this truck, who is also, you know, I'm the former mayor. I built this building. I was in charge of administration. So, I come to all the council meetings because I represent. Oh, they're trash, you're right, and they're trash, but not the same way. Because the food waste or the green waste that go to our recycling center in California, if you put, they'll pull them out because they're just not digestible, period. They are so wicked. They really are. Good to see you. Yes, thank you.
Sir. Pleasure. Hey, gracias por todo. I'm going to be building. Okay. You can call me on my cell phone. Okay, gracias. La pase bien.
Welcome. Thank you. I hope you
Good to
enjoy
see you.
yourself.
Thank you, Millsburg. Yeah, we'll see you, brother.
I'm happy a student from the university. Oh, that's great. Doctoral student, public health. Congratulations. Yeah, and I have a thing for what the city needs. We need to get the city into the 21st century with technology, research, and internet, broadband. We need to get the city into a new. It's a beautiful blue zone, but let's make it the blue zone of the 21st century. That's right. That's right. We're going to be working on it. I promise you that. That's why I'm here for that, because I used to work for the state. Before I stepped down, I used to work for both the federal and the state government. Before I stepped down to go back to school, got my doctorate. Look forward to seeing you around. I'm an expert in lifestyle medicine, community. So I have a claim for the community needs sometimes. They talk like the housing authority. It's a little itty bitty 1% of the community development. We need more of that. Because I keep telling them, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to grow up. I don't want to look out the window at a parking lot. Do better than that. And I'm part of the University Sustainability Committee. And the hospital Sustainability Committee. Please say something about that. I only have a few months left before I graduate. So, I don't know yet how long I'm going to be here.
Congratulations.
I've been here 2 years. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. But we'll do that later. The whole point is you can advocate for inclusiveness, sustainability, and drawing people here. Like he said, the city is community kind of resistant to change. Sometimes I think, get with it. We're in the 21st century now. So let's get with it.
Thank you for welcoming me. I really appreciate it.
So that's why like, we went to the emergency management.
Yes.
Okay. Think about two circumstances. It's something that we could be the leader in this. We think about it. You heard about all of the problems that come from the LA wildfire. Every politician trying to pass it back, and nobody's doing anything. Nothing happened. It's that the American way. You think about that. We don't have to be that way. We don't want to. Now, on the same day that the wildfire broke out,
For example, I'll give you an example.
there's a huge earthquake in the county in China. Same day, the wildfire happened. You know what they did? They evacuated the entire city. 86,000 people. They got everybody out from the earthquake in the middle before all the landslides in the northern part of Himalaya. They took the entire city out, moved everybody in safety. The earthquake happened at 9:05 in the morning when the kids were in school. By the time it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody was gone. Everybody was safe. There were people who were killed by the infrastructure. Yes, sure. But they had everybody out and they were doing the cleanup. While we have wildfires for 2 weeks. They did it in a few hours. And how fast and how efficient they are. They learn from us.
That's true.
You can look it up on there, the thing that January 7th earthquake. You think how dare emergency response.
Thank you. Congratulations. Yeah, I'm really happy for you.
86,000 people in that town.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
And they got everybody out. The people who died in the earthquake, yeah, they had to do the search and rescue after. But for everybody else, out and safe. They had temporary housing, temporary shelter, everything set up, ready for them, and the kids were back in school by the evening. You think they're in school at 9 o'clock, suddenly the earthquake happened. They deploy the evacuation team, get everybody out to the safe place. By the time it's 3 o'clock, it's just simply cleaning up the mess, and everybody else is safe and doing homework. Amazing, look it up if you can. The world is washed and is shocked. Compare that with the LA fire, where nobody does anything. That's why I'm saying here at the Blue Zone, get your shit together. You sure you want to be resistant? Sure. You want to do something or do nothing? Which one you want?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, it's almost already midnight, so I just that's another 6 to 7 hours.
There was only one store that doesn't exist anymore. That it was, I guess the license was
Yeah, and I'm like, wow. You know, what is Loma Linda, 25,000 population? Something like that. Yeah, so it's something like Grand Terrace, which is 25,000 in population. So that's why you guys, the sheriff's department shares with Grand Terrace. In Grand Terrace, I don't have the number currently in mind right now, but there's quite a few there too.
Are there marijuana outlets here in Loma?
In Loma Linda, that I know of, no. All I know is that the pharmacies do it for, you know, the medical. Yeah, but other than that, I don't know of any dispensaries and
The smoke shops.
well, that's
The vaping is.
yeah. See, there's a fine line to a lot of these things. Very fine line to a lot of this stuff. And there's smoke shops that are in cities, for example, unincorporated areas of San Bernardino County are not allowed to have dispensaries. That's an ordinance. They are not allowed to have dispensaries in any of the unincorporated areas. For example, Bloomington, Muscoy, they're unincorporated, so they cannot have dispensaries as a marijuana. That's part of the ordinance that the county has put down, because if not, the unincorporated areas really don't have anybody that wants to. Can you imagine the amount of dispensaries that would go up? So they put the ordinance in. If there's any dispensaries that do pop up in unincorporated areas, they shut them right down. So it's one of those things that you come and you share and you do and you try and you just continue to.
I just get this group. You guys look good with that.
Can I pull a cigarette out?
I know. We're gonna use this in our celebration. Yeah. We're not done yet.
Well, thank you for being here. Appreciate you guys'
Thank you.
support.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I'm here to help you guys, and like I said, I'm also a board member with Colton. I'm also an elected official in the community, so if there's anything I can do, please. You have my information, right?
I do have your
Okay.
information.
Actually, I do have cards. Here you go. Here's my card. This also has my cell number and all that information. That's my card.
Thank you.
Currently, right now, we're working in Grand Terrace to do the same thing. I've been working with the mayor there, city council, to bring a tobacco retail license to that city.
Now, are books all funded by the state and not by federal funds?
Yeah, I'm funded by
Oh, each one of us?
Your agenda. This makes it easy. It's already written for you.
All right. Anything to report out?
Yes, well, not much, but the council met, or the Housing Authority met in closed session to discuss pending litigation on the matter that was set forth in the agenda, and direction was given to staff. Other than that, I have nothing else to report.
Okay, any reports of members, reports of officers? Seeing none, I think we're adjourned. Hey, we haven't had a long meeting in quite some time.